Well, hello everyone, and welcome, Simon Roberts. How are you doing on this fine late summer?
Oh, it's late summer, rubbing it in. It's cold up here where I am in the Midlands. It's overcast, there's been rain, and gloomy weather's coming on. It's just the sort of weather you like.
One of the things I'm pleased at is that the dawn now is later than because it was kind of quite difficult to get up at like 4:30. So I typically didn't, but now it's a little bit later. I'm getting up at the dawn, as you know, in tandem with my spiritual practice, as it were, that I talk about on the Mindset channel. It's good to get up and do your stuff at dawn. So
I was wondering about your spiritual practices and the weather changing. I thought maybe he's been cooking up a potion. I know there's a family history of cooking up potions.
Oh well, yeah, I did mention that, didn't I? Yeah. No, I don't do any. I don't do any potions or herbal thing or anything like that.
Surrey Magian occultism.
No, unfortunately not. But yeah, I do like trying to get up and do that stuff first thing, because I mean, if nothing else, you get it out of the way for the day as well. Otherwise, it can take up. If I get up late, by the time I've started, it's already like 10 or 11, in which case half the day's gone. Whereas if you can get it done like between 6 and 7, you've got the day in front of you. Speaking of old men discussing things, Simon, we're talking about. I mean, this is the sort of thing that I would have rolled my eyes at if I was 25. But now I'm older. I'm like, I get up, crack of dawn, and I'm kind of done by about 10 p.m. To be honest, most days. So.
Yeah, I'm dreading this because the old people thing. They always wake up at like 4 a.m. and they're sort of walking around the countryside and the glories of the day and all that stuff. And I'm really a night person, so I struggle with that. If I get old and I start waking up early, it's all over.
So well, also on the panel is Horace. How you doing, Horace?
I'm all right, but Simon, what's the temperature where you are then?
Oh God, blimey! If I just check what it says on the BBC, it says it's 23, but I don't believe it.
My computer says it's 25 and feels hotter and it's humid, and it is. Yeah. It's actually a little bit sweaty here. Like summer is back.
23,
but it's not the same as before.
Cold.
Yeah, it's cool at night. Like you can sleep at night and stuff.
Thundery showers, gentle breeze, all up until Monday.
My fan broke. I'm going camping at the weekend though, so I don't want all this talk of storms and stuff.
You're not going to the Notting Hill Carnival?
Oh, damn it! I knew I was missing something.
Yeah,
I have been to that before actually.
Twice. Could take that foy down there that
That's
like,
it.
Should be like
okay
into your progressive ways.
Some horse twerking action.
I don't acknowledge the word foid anyway. It's a bit of a weird word. Simon.
Lady,
just one time,
woman.
Woman, yeah. Simon, could we at some point just have a either day-to-day or jam style welcome, please? So maybe next time.
I'll work on that. I will work on that. Absolutely.
Because I just like every time AA says to you welcome, and I just immediately think of Chris Morris going welcome.
Yeah,
I love that.
We'll do that.
It was a long-running thing that I'd introduce Dee. And then I wouldn't bring the other guests in for like 10 minutes. It was kind of like a shit test we used to do on Unpopular Opinions. It was kind of funny, but Hat, welcome, sir. Welcome.
Hello. It's nice to be back. I actually, now that you reminded me, I may go to the Notting Hill Carnival just to see, a bit of a party, bit of a knees up. That'd be fun. You never know.
Will you be there with your thumbs in your braces, high kicking like a Cockney sparrow?
Yeah, that's right, because that's what they do at Notting Hill. You know,
Hat is
it's
like
all a bit
the
of
Tommy
it's all a bit of
Steele
an
of
old-fashioned
modernity.
London knees up. Yeah. Won't father paper to parlour. Yeah.
I would say one thing for it. I mean, it is free. It's like a big rave. It's like a daytime rave that you don't have to pay. You can see some top DJs there and stuff. But you'd also see, you know, the
Well, it is
abominations.
Sodom and Gomorrah.
Horror.
I had a friend once tell me that he went to Notting Hill a few years ago, and it was 2 people were doing it in a tree. They'd actually climbed up into a tree to do it.
Wow.
I didn't even like the worst thing I saw was just this. There was a, I don't know, like if she was like a sort of a reggae. She was a white woman, but like of a sort of. It was like, I can only describe her as like a whore, like, but I don't mean it like an insult. Like she was, you know, this float going past with a DJ or whatever, or people dancing. She was holding up the float, but like twerking, but going along, you know, walking, twerking. And there was this, like, I don't know, he must have been from like Barbados or something. This guy like practically inside her, and like doing what you do behind the twerking woman. And it was, and like they were so exhibitionist about it. It was like, it was. She had on a literally, I think it was tattooed on her back something like white meat or something. It was unbelievable. It was like it's just like really degenerate, you know. And that was one enduring image among many. Another is just there's loads of cops around, basically looking for blades and stuff. But you know, people know how to conceal a blade when there's a cop around. It's just a stupid spectacle, really.
Hat, I have to report to you that these Fabrica 5s, which are from Honduras, but they have been blended to be like Cubans, are pretty good. I've kind of, as not to use up my old stock, I've been smoking these recently. You should look into them because you can get them.
I've never had a Fabrica 5.
Yeah,
they
you can get them
nice.
At fraction of the price, and you know, it's pretty good, pretty good. It's blended by this guy called Hamlet. So you were saying that
I'm smoking a Hamlet.
You're smoking a Hamlet. You know, you can get. Anyway, speaking of DJs, I do have, before we get on to our kind of main topic I've set up here before Curto. I had a spare hour before the stream, so I started experimenting with making the Oof Brutal ad. Now, the next sale is not actually until Halloween, so it was quite a big wait for Oof Brutal to come out. But I thought I could test drive it. I thought I could test drive Oof Brutal just on the viewers of this stream, because I've noticed in the analytics that of the total viewers that this channel gets in any given week or month, only 22% actually tune in to the live streams, which is either this or office hours. And that means like 78% of viewers of the channel will never see this stream, you know, unless for whatever reason this stream blows up, which it probably won't. Which means that I think I can kind of safely test drive Oof Brutal as a kind of limited sale run. I could just do it for this one stream, and anybody who watches this can use the code. But then it's not actually officially released until October. So I was gonna kind of show you my prototype. I've been playing around with it. I did 5 different musics behind it, but I think I like the one I've gone with here. Let's see. Let's see. I'll just play it once here for the crowd, and they can give me a thumbs up and thumbs down. And you've got to bear in mind that many of the ads initially get a thumb down, and then you kind of warm to them over time after you're kind of after it gets under your, you know,
growers
under the brain, as it were. But anyway, I'll play it once. You can this code is actually live. You can use it if you see it. So I'm not false advertising, but there are a limited number of them. So if you use it and it doesn't work, they've all been used up. Okay. But let me know what you make of this one. Is it a thumbs up or a thumbs down? If thumbs down predominate, I'm going to have to go back to the drawing board. But anyway, let me just play this.
Oof, brutal.
Oof, brutal.
Oof, brutal.
Oof,
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 oof.
25% off all courses. Buy it now.
Brutal.
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 Oof. Brutal.
Buy it now. There it is, short and sweet. And the way the DJ thing, that music is actually from the World DJing Championships 2005. Don't ask me how I know that piece of music, but yeah, I kind of dig it. So yeah, brutal.
Well, I know it's commonplace to say I prefer the earlier work, but I'm going to embrace this new spirit of creativity that's going on here. So I think this is probably your hunky dory.
Well,
you often cover like people like Owen Jones or a different bias on Tuesdays, but yesterday skipped all that, didn't you? It was just a discussion. Yesterday's stream was just a discussion about elite theory and stuff, wasn't it?
That's correct. I wasn't really planning it, but on Scrump and Evelyn said, "Oh, we want to come on to talk about to set the record straight," and then Plan Blast was like, "I'll come on." And given that we've been kind of memeing the dastardly elite theorists as a band, we just did it as a stream. Yeah, we did it as a stream. I don't know what was wrong with the audio levels to start with. I did it on my laptop as opposed to this computer, which means maybe let me just have a look at all of your audio levels, because we don't have that issue here.
So it's not necessarily an end of the top of the slots or anything, or is it? Are you moving on from that? Or?
No. I wish to. I like Top of the Slops as a format. It was just that was like a special edition where I thought I'd give some mainstream prime time to the most deadly heels and all of the right wing, the dreaded Troon, boyfriend of said Troon, and
the young upstart
and the young snotty young heel. He'd definitely be the Tully Blanchard. You asked me about the Tully, the Four Horsemen. If I was Ric Flair, he'd be the Tully Blanchard. Scrump would have to be Arn Anderson because he kind of looks like Arn Anderson, and that would make Evelyn Barry Windham or Lex Luger, depending on which one she wanted to be, or she could be Ollie Anderson, I guess. But I don't think. I think Barry Windham's a better fit, to be honest. So.
Arn Anderson was a proper good wrestler, right? He was like
Anderson was brilliant. Arn Anderson was absolutely
loads of
brilliant.
moves.
Oh, he was just. I love the Four Horsemen. All four of them. They were absolutely all four of those wrestlers there were world class.
Tully Blanchard's character was sort of like a sneaky bastard, right? A bit of a worm. But is that right?
Yeah, he is. And I tell you, there's I think Starcade '85. Finally, Magnum TA, who had a tragic accident later in his career, kind of cut his career short. But the big kind of he was going to be like the Hulk Hogan for the NWA, Tully Blanchard, but he had a career-ending injury, and basically Tully Blanchard has been sleazing on his just being an absolute bastard for months and months and months, and they end up having a I Quit match in the middle of a steel cage where there's a microphone, so one of them has to quit, scream I quit into the thing. That is a brilliant match, and if you want to see someone get their ass handed to them, Magnum TA beats Tully Blanchard to an absolute bloody pulp in that match. Brilliant match.
Well, that's 85, do you say?
85, yeah, Starcade 85.
I've never seen any. Yeah, the earliest wrestling I ever saw was 88. So I've seen these guys, but later on.
Yeah. You're missing out, Hora. If you ever had any interest to go back, it's kind of grittier. The mid 80s is grittier than the late 80s. So even Hulk Hogan in 84, 85 frequently kind of gets bloody and has, much grittier matches. So yeah, I recommend that period if you're a wrestling fan. Anyway. So yeah, what was the verdict on the oof brutal from the chat? What did they? Shall I play it again?
Like it.
I want to watch it again, actually.
Shall we play it again? I'll play it one last time to get used to it, get acclimatized.
Oof, brutal.
Oof, brutal.
Oof, brutal.
Oof,
oof,
oof, oof. 25% off all courses. Buy it now.
Brutal.
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 Oof. Brutal.
Buy it now.
The thin beige Duke. I would tighten the framing and do a few crash zooms as well.
Well,
You-
let
you
me
look a little-
let me save the edit so I have it, so I can work on it again. Hold on.
There's a little campness to you, though, AA. Sorry.
Well, I'm trying to do Owen Jones. I'm trying to,
Yeah.
but
You
I
look
now
camper
realise
than
that
him.
my performance is gayer than Owen Jones.
Yeah,
It's good.
it is a
It's
little
good,
bit.
but no, he's doing an echo of the Owen Jones. That's how it works. It's good.
I mean, Owen
It's slightly
Jones
mocking as well.
He's never been that camp, has he? Like Jones. I mean, he's a bit, maybe a little bit, but
You have to exaggerate it to show it.
Yeah, he's camped it up. Yeah, well, I mean, you know about Simon. You know about acting, right? Is that called hamming? Is that?
Well, a little bit, but it's a kind of a hard sell ad style that AA does, which I think is funny, and I think therefore you can do whatever you want. I think your camera technique is good as well. The way you're, focusing in on the lens and the little turns of the head. I think they're funny.
I'm always channeling. Speaking of wrestling in '88, Horus, I'm always channeling Vince McMahon. If you remember at the start of the events, he would just be mental shilling WrestleMania or Royal Rumble. He'd be like, "It's the Royal Rumble." So I kind of do my own version of that. All right, so let us now turn to the matter at hand, which is I call the stream "Escaping the Hyperreal Matrix of Online Politics." It ties in pretty heavily to Adam Curtis because this is one of his dominant themes, if not his absolute dominant theme, in hypernormalization, and in fact across all his work. And obviously yesterday we did the whole stream on what is elite theory. I also a couple of weeks back did my daily lectures on the postmoderns, on Baudrillard and Guy Debord, Frederick Jameson, and so on and so forth. And it did actually kind of brought home, reconnecting with some of these guys, for these lectures, has hammered home just how kind of, in a way, just how fake I see a lot of it. And one of the things I think has happened is that when we all first got online, so I'm talking like 10 years plus more for most of us in a political sense, right? We, I guess, thought that we were kind of stepping out of the matrix in some way, or like somehow this was real because it was not monitored or something like this. And my suggestion, or one of my ideas that I've pushed in applied elite theory and in my essays and Substacks and so on, is that actually what's happened over that period is that the internet itself kind of either became part of the matrix itself or just became a new matrix, a new kind of holding playpen, in which, if anything, things are even less real. Now, there's a guy called Soka City who, is a long-time supporter. He subscribes on Substack and so on. And he has taken he's like not happy with my recent kind of stepping back from politics. Is that the right thing to say? Or the fact that I'm, he said, I haven't been watching much recently. You've become too high-minded. You've become too high-minded, he said. He left a comment on the What is Elite Theory, and then he kind of took to Substack, and I kind of responded there and come back. But I actually think that there is an interesting question at the heart of how he's feeling, how I'm feeling, and my point, and whether he's got a point, and so on and so forth. And I want to try to in a half hour or so, as we have these chats on these streams, really think about this question, whether online politics is politics or just a kind of passive spectator sport. So on the stream yesterday, he said, "Is Academic Agent the new Tim Pool?" Right? AA's comments really are a slavish lot. I kissed the man's ass for his witty show, but the comments could be more critical. Academic Agent seems to royally chicken out and go down with the UK establishment. What a complete betrayal. I still hold out hope, but it's not looking good. Could AA be about to jump off and accept a few measly $1 million a la Tim Pool? This is very disheartening. I will try to be thankful from what I learned from him, but this one stings. I feel personally very let down. In the final analysis, Nima Parvini was able to describe the problem with an artist's talent, but not the solution. Almost everyone here can describe the future we want, but he could not. Poor old Trump, don't he? We just want a stable homeland and to be able to express ourselves. It is not nearly as complicated as his takedowns of the elites were. AA is out of road to describe his vision. What do you want for our people? You can't just make criticisms forever. It's a spiral. Form a vision. Be part of a new political formula. AA is nowhere near that now. No comment on the quirky guests, but it feels very, very contemporary and safe. I'd say that I was gutted or annoyed, but it's mostly anger. That is all. I think that's all that most of us feel right now, he says, okay? And, I don't want to mock, like, obviously these emotions of his are real, right? These sentiments aren't, for him, they're real right now, which is why I want to address them, because maybe people are feeling like this. And then over on Substack, he says, AA is not a passive observer. He is an active participant in politics and discourse and must bear some risk and responsibility. Now, to this, I replied over on Substack, I think people have to stop mistaking videos and podcasts for actual politics. It's a basic category error. There's a whole set of videos forthcoming from me on what it would take to build a combat organization. The fact is, most people, myself included, aren't Lenin and just don't have what it would take to, quote unquote, do politics in that manner. You have two routes. One, become a liar and try to get elected, in which case you join the regime. Or two, become a revolutionary like a Bolshevik in and out of jail in the hopes that your revolution will come. Otherwise, you are a passive observer, okay? Now, this prompted lots of people to say, this guy Stefano came in, he said, oh, actually, you're conflating categories, there's more than this. Half of politics is the information space, yada, yada, yada. He says, Soka City comes back and says, you presenting this dichotomy that you've concocted is not very friendly, a basic category area. This is sophistry. AA can speak pro wrestling. Why drop a term like that in here? Blah, blah, blah. This is dithering. You're afraid of the consequences, yada, yada, yada. Okay, so, and I think it's worth addressing this here because, I mean, I don't think that podcasts and videos are political in the true sense of kind of being an organized cadre that could create change. It is not politics in that sense. Now, it's true that the Bolsheviks and various other vanguards throughout history have created propaganda, okay? But this propaganda had a use, right? It had a dual function. The first function was basically was the equivalent of slop to get like a base of normie support. And the other reason for doing it was to recruit hardcores into the vanguard. Okay, that is what the Bolsheviks did in their, what they called it, propaganda and agitation. Now, the fact is, when let's say my video this morning, calling Winston Churchill the greatest traitor in British history, quoting Major General Richard Hilton. Now, was the creation of this video, which I see as an educational thing, also a political act? Okay, because it's kind of undermining and questioning the Boomer Truth regime and and the kind of faith that people have in certain myths and narratives that have built up around World War II. And this is coming in with actually all these people were betrayed the nation and gave away the empire when they didn't need to, etc., etc. And I want to maintain the delineation that even though you could say that a video like that is quote unquote politically charged or controversial, it is still not actually engaged in the act of quote unquote doing politics, because the person who gets animated by that has, like, I don't have a kind of combat organization to recruit them into. Okay, I'm not like at the front of some, you know, militant tendency for them, you know, to recruit the hardcores. And also, you know, let's pretend I just recruit someone for base support. That base support doesn't really have anywhere to go. It's not like I'm leading a workers' revolution, or, you know, so it is not truly political in the sense that a combat organization would be political. And it's also not political in the sense that I don't have a part, like, there's no, like, often with politics, there's a sale at the end of it. And the implicit sale at the end of, you know, is vote for Donald Trump, or vote for Nigel Farage, or vote for Labour, or vote for, you know, what's the receipt? What's the sale at the end of it? The political sale. And I'm basically telling people, actually check out from that whole thing. Stop paying attention to it. Go for a walk. You know, it like, escape it, because you're not going to be able to affect it. It is in fact a kind of control grid used to harvest your energy in an almost vampiric sense. So that is my view of it. But I thought, given that all of the gentlemen on here are engaged in some respect, one by appearing on these streams, but also, Hat, you've got your own channel that you do shows with Simon on now. Horus, you've got your Substack, you've done writing for many years. Like, when you are creating content online, do you see yourself as quote unquote doing politics? Because I honestly think that a lot of things started to go wrong. Okay, and I'm not having a go at anyone in particular here, right? But, and I don't know if you agree or disagree, Hat, right? But I think a lot of things started to go wrong when people started mistaking effectively online content or podcasts for doing politics, for actually, like, oh, we're a political movement now, or we're, you know, and it was never that, and it could never be that, because online's not real. It's not it's not an organized thing. It's actually a kind of, as I've said many times, a loosely connected league of moderately interesting color commentators. So I don't know where we want to start. Do you want to take it, Simon, or?
I can only sort of put in random comments. I mean, but you know, in a way, we are. Yeah, I think increasingly I'm becoming a Debordian. I'm interested in, you know, you and we are part of the spectacle as well. And this is, to tie it back to Adam Curtis, a thing that he says himself in his latter career nowadays. He says, I'm part of the problem, in that I'm keeping you focused on these elements of the past. And these elements of the past are part of the current power structure of, you know, what they call communicative capitalism. Little bits of all of our data online are being stored on servers somewhere out there, and then they're being recycled into the system to create the agitprop, in a sense, that what you're saying, the agitational propaganda that results in, you know, angry people clicking more, and servicing a commercialized system in which people's hopes and aspirations are just translated into feedback loops, which is a lot of what's happening on the social media space. I mean, probably why, you know, you get tired of Twitter, or you get tired of any platform, because you do feel the churn and recycling of it is so enervating. It's so draining of your energy. So my sense is to actually head in a sort of Debordian direction. I mean, what we're doing on Hat's channel is part of that thing of reacclimatizing people to a post-online space, in a way, and re-engaging with the cultural and the aesthetic. So that we can rehabilitate the energy that we need to actually engage in anything that's vaguely political. But even drawing it back to the things that you said yesterday, things like somebody saying, "Hey, let's start a pub for our guys. Let's actually locate IRL spaces to create a sense of actuality about this game, not just the sense of meandering from one sphere or one locus to another online to try and satisfy, you know, libidinal urges to be angry about things or to be vindicated about things all the time. I think there is a sense in which we acknowledge we are part of a spectacle now, but that's not. I don't think this thing of, well, if you go online, you have to sort of immediately. It's axiomatic that you have to offer a solution. I don't believe that at all. I think you were talking about the problems, and in a way, the stuff about elite theory in the last few weeks, the problem has been that, I think it's a question of tone and being politic and diplomacy. It's the problem that was identified about there's ideology and then there's elite theory. I mean, I see elite theory in a sense as the kind of laws of physics of how politics is actually enacted in the world, and ideology, if you like, is part of the buffet of flavors that the political action can take or funnel itself through, but essentially you shouldn't confuse the two. The problem being with this, though, is that there's a lot of people with varying ideas about how change is going to be enacted, and you've got the sensitivity about people's attachment to that through that libidinizing process of being online, literally getting your hormones worked into positions and worked out of positions, trying to gravitate towards the truth and the solution at the same time. And they are sometimes mutually exclusive, because the solution is being kept out of reach by the process itself of ensnaring you in the feedback loop. And that's when it becomes difficult, and all I can say is, you have to tread lightly when you tread on men's dreams, for you tread upon their souls. So that's the difficulty in the online conversation that I think has been happening.
Yeah, no. Before I kind of hand over here, you've talked about Mark Fisher in the past, Simon, and the whole idea of hauntology.
Oh yeah.
I feel like I may have had a pang of this last night? So I think it was last night, where it just came up on my phone that Dolly Parton had died.
Yeah.
And I wasn't a particularly big Dolly Parton fan. It just so happens that I gave Jolene a whirl when we were on. We did a little trip back to Wales, and in the car I stuck Jolene on, and we had a kind of sing song to it. But then I thought two things. One, I looked up just to confirm, that it was true. And I got to her Wikipedia page. Horace, I have to say, Dolly Parton in '77. She was hot. She was absolutely smoking in a day, Dolly Parton. But anyway, that's the first thing. But the second thing is that I mean, again, this could just be part of getting old, but I'm now starting to feel, Simon, that the old hyperreality is slowly but surely just dying.
Yeah.
The old hyperreality of which Dolly Parton was a part. And in fact, Morgoth wrote a really quite heartfelt essay about this morning on Substack, which I read, about Dolly Parton. And he, as he so often does, being a poet, kind of sort of started summing up what something I felt when I saw that Dolly Parton had died. She's not actually the first person. There's been quite a lot of people die, like in recent time, like people who were pretty famous when I was growing up or whatever, who are now like they're all starting to go, like dare I say, the day of the pillow's coming type thing. But with it, it's almost like the old hyperreality is almost gone now. The hyperreality of Hollywood, and I mean, Morgoth was talking about Elvis and American icons and things who are kind of larger than life in that Andy Warhol's sense that me and Dee talked about years ago. The kind of star, the icon. That mode is almost gone now, and it is in many ways being replaced with the hyperreality that we're talking about now, which is, dare I say, in many ways so much worse. Like Twitter and the fast moving. You always have to be, have a take on the latest thing, and the thick and fast. And I don't know. I mean, in a strange way, I kind of want to go back to Dolly Parton, but it is something that I've been thinking more and more recently as these people are kind of dying off. But anyway, who wants to take it next? Hat or Horace? Who wants to go?
So what's the hyper reality we're talking about? Like you say, there's an old one and a new one. Like you're talking about sort of celebrity culture and stuff, or all the things that we hear about in the mass media that make us more excited about things than they really warrant. Is that what it means?
Well, I mean, hyperreality in a nutshell. You know, as is so often the case, it's easier to kind of explain it at the extreme edge, right? So I'll give you an extreme example, and you can work backwards from there, right? So, you know, in 1997, when Princess Diana died, and people were, do you remember when people were buying like literal, like trolleyfuls, sackfuls? You know, they were walking out of HMV literally with stacks of Elton John CDs for Candle in the
Make
Wind.
sure it goes to number one.
Do you remember? Do you remember the absolute hysteria
I missed that aspect, but I remember the flowers, the week or so of people queuing up to visit.
So that I would say is a particularly egregious case of hyper reality, because it's kind of not real in the sense that it has really no effect on your life. You have no, like, the only it existed only as spectacle, only as media spectacle. The only reason you care about it is because it's media, and yet it did actually have a real effect on the people's life. You know, the people who were literally shedding real tears for this woman who, you know, just like a few months ago was being cussed out as a whore in the sun. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
But so just to take it further, Horus, the true meaning of hyperreality is that, okay, we can see it at the extreme end there, but it is that since the age of mass media, basically people live their entire lives in this kind of real bubble, and media's got this way of endlessly referring back to itself. In fact, if you remember a couple of weeks back, do you remember when we were watching that BBC advert where, oh, what has the BBC ever done for us? Do you remember that? And it was entirely self-referential. It was entirely like, what is the BBC's given us shows that are on the BBC, and we're meant to kind of believe that is a shared kind of experience that we all have.
Self-referential is a good word to think about. I mean, when you're going all the way back to when we looked at the century of the self, the way that the prism through which we view reality was reinvented as being one of viewing it through desires. And, you know, what you're talking about there with Diana, you know, I could call it the Hitchens line. You know, you've talked about it before. It's the line that Curtis identified when archives stopped being kind of interesting to look at, because everybody had to synthesize a new type of social self that fell into line with the Diana type hysteria and became a kind of a creature that was being controlled, if you like, by these meta narratives in a more kind of obvious way through that, you know, the propagation of media in certain kinds of, you know, directions of things like social justice and the discourse of care harm principle to the exclusion of everything else.
So yeah. So in a way, so if you think about now, when I'm talking about Twitter as being hyperreal, for example, just think of how many things happen on Twitter that is just a self-referential loop. Okay, I mean, when I did my video on this, the lecture on it a few weeks back, I've still got the diagram I made. You know, Musk says something on Twitter, another guy responds to it, a woman reacts to what Musk says, and then Musk reacts. Okay, that's the whole story. It's just stuff that's happened on. Nothing's actually happened. People said stuff on Twitter, and then the old media, the legacy media, picks that up and turns it into a story. And so now there's a story that Musk said something on Twitter, and another guy said something, and a woman reacted, and then Musk reacted, right? Which is a entire, like, nothing's actually happened, but yet an event has taken place in the hyperreal space of media and social media now. Yeah. And this is really what we're talking about. And once you've, I mean, the reason I'm kind of got to this place is because once you've been round the go round, not just one times, but 10 times, 20, 100 times. I mean, how many times have we been round the go round at this point? 10 years of being, you know, on Twitter or on YouTube or whatever. You see it and you see it and you see it, and it's like, okay, it starts to become a blur. Even things that are real, like let's say the Iran war, right? like it could be a beguiling experience to go on the Judge Nat channel for Judge Napolitano, and just scroll back and have a look at all the videos and have a look at all the thumbnails and have a look at all of the discussions that take place on that channel. Okay, and it's just like, oh my god, like if you've been watching that, oh, it's like World War III every other week, and Iran is playing this masterstroke and that masterstroke, and there's Trump has caved in this time, or all sorts of shit happening. Whereas actually, like we've been doing that go round since the Russia-Ukraine war started, and as far as I can tell, fucking nothing's happened really. It's been in deadlock for years now, and it's, so you understand what I'm saying, right? That there's a sense in which the endless churn of it all starts to become its own kind of, it might as well be the BBC patting itself on the back for Ian Beale. It's kind of the same thing. But anyway, go on, Jorge. I hope I've explained it now. Yeah.
Yeah, I really don't think in these terms. Like, I've never thought of. Certainly the media do well, and to some extent the public do look for what you'd call hyperreal narratives and stuff, like just basically a fantasy that suits, say, the Mirror to sell for cash, basically. Yeah, fantasy version of events that, and yeah, like for people to really give a shit about like the injustice of how Diana died and stuff, is just weird. It's just strange behavior. Yeah, I that is, and self-defeating. Like you're letting yourself be led around by the nose to some extent. At least in the sense of what Chomsky said, even if they're not telling you what to think, they generally are good at getting you to talk about what they want to, like a set of, care about this, do ignore that, I think there's plenty of that. I don't think that the internet makes that worse. I think the internet makes it better because it is possible. Like, whereas, when there was just BBC and like a few newspapers, people were much, much more easy to channel. There would still be, certain sort of free thinkers or whatever, but the mass was more coherent. The mass that moves as one herd was much more coherent before the internet. It's precisely why the internet has always been treated as a threat and a problem by the likes of the ADL and others who prefer just like one monopoly voice, really, or one small oligopoly. I think the internet has made that much better, and I don't have this same aversion to X that you do. I think, in terms of like whether anything on there amounts to making any change to politics, to real politics, who's really in power and so on, that just depends how you use it. I mean, we can't really say one thing for all the users of X. That's roughly as diverse as mankind itself. And so some of them are on there genuine. I mean, like, I first encountered various definitely political figures by them messaging me on X, because I'd identified myself on there as someone who wanted to use it for politics, albeit, obviously very much the peripheral aspects of politics. But I was there to help these people who I agreed with politically, in terms of our shared political beliefs. And I was there to undermine and subvert what I saw as my political enemies on there.
One of the things that I think has changed, though, is that I'm old enough to remember when you genuinely did have, I mean, people nowadays would call this alt-right 1.0, right? The crew that were more or less blown apart by Charlottesville in 2017.
We're talking, think especially 2015 to 2017.
Yeah, so back in that era, and that was kind of, the first version of Richard Spencer and people like Vox Day and
Emperor Trump memes, loads of them.
Yeah, I mean, there was lots of that sort of stuff, but like in that sort of so on one hand of it, there was Emperor Trump, but on the other hand of it, they were doing quite a lot of kind of intellectually challenging work, pushing the peripheries and things like that. And there was a sense in which it was kind of not really controlled. It was a little bit Wild West back then. What I think has happened in the 10 years is that the various kind of power brokers have kind of got wise to the logic of it. And when all of those guys got banned or, stuck in jail or whatever happened in 2017, they were kind of taken off the map. So the original wave of people were all banned, right? They were all just taken off the map in various different. Stefan Molyneux would be one of these. Wozy was one of these, right? And some of them, still, aren't on YouTube, or in some cases they're still not even allowed on X, right? Although lots of them did come back. And in the interim, what I think happened is an inversion of this process. So there was a time in which you could genuinely say that the independent creators on the internet were actually pushing the envelope and challenging various paradigms. I think that came to an end actually around that time, and the everything became, funnily enough, a lot more organized, a lot better funded. And I wrote an article some years ago now, which was called "The Online Right is Almost Entirely Fake," right, where I kind of go into the ins and outs. And so all of the original people were kind of replaced by Bronze Age pervert and who are some of the other people like who came up in that kind of period. It was H0P Lovecraft and all this sort of stuff. Okay.
You talk about the BAP sphere specifically, who are
they played their role in this, but there was more to it. There's the tradcath sphere in a way. I mean, I hate to say it, the so-called quote unquote dissident right, many of them basically ended up taking the place. And what I think happened over time is dare I say, Lotus Eaters, they all kind of went into the vacuum that was left. And they, I believe, are actually more led around by the nose by the legacy media in a way that didn't used to happen back when it was truly independent. It was like Greg Johnson. I mean, you can say what you want about these people, Andrew Joyce. You can say what you want about these people, and they all have their striker. All of these people are, as we talked about last week, are disagreeable. They don't get on with each other. They've all had their fallings out, blah, blah, blah. But they were all truly independent people. Jim Goad, who's no longer with us, speaking of people who've, rest in peace, etc. But that was genuinely a kind of quite, quote unquote, dangerous space, okay? Because it wasn't controlled. Now, you can kind of watch all of these people who are meant to be, so-called dissidents, be led around by the nose. I'll give you a very good recent example, Horace, right? Is the whole Jason Narday thing. Now, the only person I saw that did good coverage of that was Stryker. And you mentioned it. You listened to that show, okay? Mm-hmm. Now, to me, that was dissident analysis. That was truly thinking outside of the box, thinking outside of the media, looking at how it all works and drawing a conclusion and saying, actually, for strategic reasons, don't get behind Coffinus because of X, Y, and Z, okay? That, to me, was in the spirit of the original OG thinkers. But that is not what happened on Twitter. It is not what happened on Substack. It is not what happened up and down your YouTube. Okay, they all took their starting marching orders from the exact same Daily Telegraph that was trying to get Charlie Downs cancelled just a week previous. You understand what I'm saying? So this is really what I'm talking about, is that as the space has matured, it's become basically it's replicated the functions of the legacy media, but with the added benefit that all of the people within it believe that they're being dissident, whereas in fact they are still being led around by the nose. That's my basic view of it all. So,
do you want to name names?
Well, I mean, just have a look at up and down your feed and have a look at who made 20 videos on Jason Arday, or have a look at who is taking up the cause of Nathan Coffinus, or have a look at all of the discourse around that story, and then compare it with the what's his name, Joseph Jordan podcast that you mentioned last week, and you can see the difference. Good, right, you can see the difference. It is night and day, and that to me is the difference between the truly independent, dare I say it, slightly dangerous thinker versus someone who's more or less just replicating the functions of the old legacy kind of Murdoch media, basically. Yeah.
No, you don't mean Murdoch. I
Not
that takes
Murdoch,
me back
Murdoch.
10 years as well.
I mean, they. I mean, say what you want. They were original,
Oh,
and
yeah.
they got to their analysis of MAGA way before anybody else, and they were
They
right
were early.
looking back.
Yeah.
So anyway, go on.
I just, I do. It's really hard to sort of compare and contrast yours and my experiences of this because I do think we use social media differently. You showed us what you follow on YouTube the other week, right? And no insult, I'm sure you agree. You follow a load of crap like Tim Pool. You subscribe to Tim Pool.
I don't subscribe to Tim Pool. That's
do
I don't know. Let's have a look.
He was coming up on your page. I don't know if it was your subscriptions page or your For You. Or
it's my homepage, I think.
You had Scott Ritter all over it. I mean, Scott Ritter.
I mean, the problem with YouTube is you tell it that you're not interested in certain things, and it keeps popping it back into your feed. I've noticed this.
They're the worst for that. But so if we talk about X instead, I have managed to get rid of most. I mean, I don't see any Elon Musk's feeds, and my default view is For You, not following, right? So I can see whatever X pushes, and I have eliminated most slop. I still see occasional ones. I've eliminated Basil the Great. I almost never see Basil in my feed at all, like including quoted by people I follow. I've managed to either stop X showing me it, or I've stopped people retweeting him or something. I don't know what's happened, but like I use X completely different. I don't see this cavalcade of complete bullshit. Like I actually get some good stuff in my feed.
Horace, isn't Basil? I'm not having a go at you in particular, but isn't Basil the Great part of the same struggle as you and Bo Dade?
No,
isn't he a great Restore supporter, or has he stopped supporting Restore?
No, loads of scumbags support Restore. I can't stop that. Like no, he's absolutely not working towards the same purposes or anything. Right. Probably not even genuinely political. I have no idea. I've said to people I suspect he's a spook of some kind, or hired, paid, or I don't know, but like paid to wreck our side of things. I don't know about Restore specifically, but paid to discredit. And that's just one figure. There's loads and loads of accounts who do similar to what he does. I've managed to clear my feed of nearly all of that shit. So when you talk about your experiences of X, it's like you were just seeing an endless parade of complete dog shit, right? Whereas I wasn't. But you do go for it. You engage. I saw you engaging with slop accounts and stuff. Like you go for that. Like you're attracted to it. But like X reads how you interact with them. Like X feed stuff based on who you've interacted with. So different view.
It's kind of half. I didn't ever kind of go out of my way to talk to people. But I mean,
what I mean is, I replied to Charlotte Gill earlier once, right? Like a rare reply and I will now see lots of Charlotte Gill in my feed.
Yes,
I'm sure, because it just does that. Like it loves you to keep reacting to the same person.
People had a habit of coming onto my feed, and then me lacking discipline as I was when I was on X.
Oh, you quote tweet everyone, right?
I couldn't help but quote if somebody asked me a question or somebody wanted something, I'd kind of quote tweet them to make a point, and then if they were kind of slop adjacent, they would then come up on my feed, or I'd then see more of their stuff or whatever.
Yeah, that's why I tell people, please don't engage with Basil and that kind in any way. Don't reply, don't quote, don't reply to someone quoting it, and so on and so on. Like try and kill it off, like denial oxygen sort of thing. That actually works. It does work. Like maybe it takes a bit of persistence, but like my feed must look completely different to yours. Mine's actually reasonably good quality. I mean, I'm not boasting.
All right, but that's your personal experience. But to come back to the politics question, whether you like it or not,
it's a remark on how social media works as well. Though it's not the same as the Sun or the Mirror. It's not the same as the Times or the BBC.
But it's leaning you into your own self-curation, which is part of the issue.
I accept that.
What I'm saying though is whether you like it or not, Basil the Great is kind of quote unquote controlling the discourse around the party you want to support.
you made it that way. You and Elon Musk made it that way by engaging with him. I didn't, and he's not controlling
Oh,
discourse. He's controlling discourse for like dumb women, like stupid women who think he's sweet or something. Like,
they get to vote as well.
so what? It doesn't. It's not as simple. You don't get to hold me to him or whatever. That's nothing. He's my enemy. He's definitely my enemy. Whatever party he's in, he's my enemy.
Okay, even if it's the one that you're going to support.
No, but it's the same with any group. I went to a UKIP meeting. Well, I joined UKIP for a year, and I went to a UKIP meeting. Some of the people there were just idiots, but there's nothing I can do about it. I still wanted to lend my support. Actually, I didn't, because that meeting I went to put me off, so I stopped going to them. But like, I've always known, join any group. I mean, it's the same with any group you join. There's already idiots involved. Like, sometimes at the top as well. I mean,
Hat, you've been quiet during all of this. What is your where do you stand on this question?
Well, I mean, it's gotten a pretty nebulous question, isn't it? I mean, which bit do you want me to sort of answer first?
Well, whichever. Synthesize, pick out whichever bits are interesting to you.
I mean, you mentioned at the beginning about what Simon and I do over on my channel, and I mean, even when I started that channel back way back when, in the kind of dark days of the old dissident right, even when I had much more faith in it, I was always much more of the opinion that it would only really work as an intellectual movement, not as it wasn't ever going to be politically prescriptive, which is why my content was always focused on sort of philosophy and metaphysics and introducing people to more obscure texts they might not have heard of, to try and help sort of develop a better understanding of the culture that we come from, and sort of, the things that are possible in that regard. And to be honest, this is a purely personal thing, but I've always been ill at ease with the idea of sharing a quote-unquote right wing, and we all know that there isn't really such a thing, but sharing a right wing with people who don't have the same affinity for what it is that we're even trying to save, or people acting simply on instinct and disaffection without any further thought. I've never thought it possible that anything would be achieved if that was the majority of people we allowed in, if you like, to the spaces we inhabit. And it was, and I don't think that. I mean, I've long been of the opinion that there isn't any point in following the news cycle. If anything that major happens, you'll hear about it, and you can sort of deal with it on your own terms. And I just think the problem is that I think Scrump put it best, is that people are sold lifestyle politics. I mean, I know you're familiar with all the late 20th century French philosophers and metaphysicians and writers, and they all talk about things like, as we talk about hypernormalization and kind of the society of the spectacle and all this sort of thing. And I think one of the things the Marxists get completely right is that what the bourgeois system will do is it will take passions and it will take emotions and it will take all the things that make up human life, and it will sell them back to you. It will sell them back to you as an outfit or an activism or this or that. I mean, if all of this could so easily have been seen coming if we just bother to look at the history of the left in the last 100 years, where this is exactly what happened to them, right? They were just co-opted, and their aesthetic was sold back to them, and now you get people going on marches and being made to look silly during woke and all that kind of thing. It's before long, what will happen is you'll have young right-wing kids who think they're winning by being angry on social media and shouting about this or that, being made to look as silly as the left were during woke, right? With all the caricature and things like that. It's just if you indulge in their system, if you indulge in their rhetoric, if, as certain people have been telling us we should be doing by cheering on people like Rupert Lowe on social media, I mean, none of this has any consequence. But the problem is, I'm sorry to name names, but I get the impression, obviously not knowing them personally, but the people like Bo and Carl, the reason that they're so angry about things that have happened these past few weeks is because, and they don't realize this, of course, is that they're having the dummy taken out of their mouth like a baby, right? Is that they're being shown the possibility that actually this lifestyle of constantly engaging and commentating and talking and getting angry about this and discussing the politics and the cabinet meetings and the news and who's going to be PM now and who's going to be this, who's going to do that, it's pablum. It's a pacifier. It's something that is being sold to you like slop. But as they say with all addictions, admitting you have a problem is the first and hardest step, right?
One of the things that I hadn't really counted on either. Um, is that I have watched people, and on this one, I'm not going to name names. You can fill in your own examples, but I think I've watched people, intelligent people, kind of degenerate and devolve, like devolve and become rightoids over time, become this kind of reactive, emotional, kind of almost like creature of the algo, where, you rewind like 5 years ago and these were intelligent, thinking people who wrote very good essays and actually read things and expand, so one of the reasons I've gone back to doing the lectures and the educational stuff is because I feel like the initial project of getting a higher quality thinking people into these sorts of spaces in a way failed because so many of them just became rightoids. So many of them just kind of degenerated, became either magatards or kind of slop rightists here. And it's like, well, what happened to your thinking brain? Like, how did you become these things? So that's kind of irritated. Not irritated. It's kind of upset me as a thing, because I didn't really. I figured once you have your eyes open, you can't go back. Whereas these are people who read elite theory and still degenerated and became the right side. So anyway, go on, Horace. Yeah.
Well, how recently are you talking? Because I just remember when Trump was elected the first time around, there was like an inauguration event, like a party for all. Basically, it was like online influencers who believed that they had helped get Trump elected, whether they had or not, I have no idea. But, and I just remember Richard Spencer talking about it and going, "Oh yeah, just on this one night, there was like me in the room, and I think like Laura Loomer was there, and like Mike said, not just Jews, but all sorts of people, like quite disparate people. All that they had in common was that they supported Trump." But that was a rarity. Like I remember even like all through 2015, 2016, there was still these arguments over like, wait, are we actually for like stopping and reversing immigration, or are we just for like curbing illegal immigration? That was just as big a debate like when the first time, that sort of Trump energy of 2015, 16, which somewhat spills over into British discourse as well. I just remember like back then there was just these slop grifter bullshit Sivnat bullshit artists, like Laura Loomer was around then. She was just latched onto she also saw Trump as someone who would help Israel, obviously. But there were loads of people back then. There was, what was it? I don't know. I'm not going to start naming them. Like, there's long lists of people, but there were some of them who were like real, they were called the alt-right, they were called Whig Nats or white nationalists, right? Mm-hmm. I know like calling them white nationalists rather complicates the matter because, to be an American nationalist doesn't necessarily imply race, but that's, that's a complication. But I don't think that's changed that much. I don't think it's got worse. Like I totally agree with you that the rightoid, as you talk about, is definitely no friend. It's just not doing any good. Like,
I feel like there's been a complete repeat of the exact same cycle, just with
it carries on,
with just a different set of people. And one of the reasons I still bothered with people like Spencer is because I believe I saw that Spencer had been through the cycle once before, right? That he'd seen the entire thing play out, and that was how he was able to kind of call many things that ended up happening like 2 or 3 years out. But the people who kind of should have known better didn't want to hear it because of emotion took over again, and the whole thing played out. And I think it's played out at least twice in British politics as well, 2 entire cycles.
Do you mean like Orrin McIntyre or something? Who do you mean?
Well, I don't want to name specific names or
who's fallen for like. Are you talking about people who fell for Trump the second time? Is that what you mean?
But basically, all of them did. Frankly, I think they all became magatards.
That was the death knell, I think, of any idea of the dissident right being a coherent thing.
That was one of the reasons
they all went for it.
One of the things that made doing unpopular opinions less fun is that I was like, come on, what, you're going to do all this fucking shit again? And most of them carried on. Most of them carried on 6, 7, 8 months down the line when it was obvious what Trump 2 was going to be. They were still clinging on. I don't know where they are now. but the point is, these are the. I mean, there were some horrible. Did you remember when those Israeli students had the kind of fracas on the campus, and then they put up the American flag on the campus? You know, it was like, come on, guys, come on, and
Okay.
no, the rake is coming. No, I'm gonna face plant in it yet again. And I mean, I'm not just picking on the Americans here. That was just one whole cycle. Then to live through all of that and to then watch it all happen again in the British sphere is kind of like, how many times are we going to do it?
What's
I
happening
see
in the
no.
British sphere? What are people falling for at the moment then in the British
Oh,
sphere?
I mean, raise the colours. Going to the Tommy rally.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah, I just tell people don't bother getting
it,
involved with either of those things, obviously. But like,
it's also the general lifestyle thing of the commentator. Every little meme debasing themselves by posting AI slot with Union Jacks in it. Amelia. It's just pathetic. I don't like. Why would any of us want to spend time with these people? Or like, why would you? These people, they're just infants, mental infants.
What I'm saying is,
aren't we
people,
and the audience already against these people though? So I don't know what's the
but
controversy.
this is the thing. But what I'm saying is, some of these people should know better. Like, okay, I'll give you an example. Nick Dixon, who I kind of like as a guy, I've met. He kind of gets a lot of the stuff that we talk about, but yet he still kind of really went for the Amelia thing. He was like, "Oh, it's my guilty pleasure. I'm really going to go for it. So I'm going to indulge." And I'm like, well, I don't know. I mean, there have been so many wife jack.
Oh yeah, let me make a point at this exact juncture though. I don't barely know what the Amelia thing is or the wife jack thing. You do. You're more in the stop sphere than me. Like I'm not. I don't say that as an insult or a criticism. It's just you're talking about things that I barely even know what you're referring to. Like,
yeah, but to be fair, that was when he was on Twitter, right? I mean, you couldn't help seeing it.
But I was on Twitter as well. Like. And I saw a vague references to the Amelia meme. I just didn't click on them. I didn't look into what it was because it just looked stupid. Like the government released something and then people made a parody of it. Right? Is that what it was?
It was a kind of Debordian détournement. They took a government propaganda thing and they twisted it online. Well, twisted it. I mean, as it were, in our favour, in quotes, in heavy quotes, to be an agitprop for an anti-immigration agenda. So yeah, it was a kind of example of that.
Do you think there's a certain significance to that though, AA? Like I'm the person who's most politicised, as it were, like most supportive of participating in electoral politics or party politics, I'd say. And I'm the least clued into what each of these particular items of slop mean, like, because I avoid them.
I think you actually go and read books, though, don't you?
I read books sometimes.
I think you do. I mean, I think you are very studied in a way. It is not at all. But
I mean, I am quite online. I am mediumly online compared to.
You're looking. I think you're actively looking, isn't it? Your sort of availability heuristic is towards actual useful information, rather than being derailed by the angry making stuff.
It's kind of like I do want to emphasise. I'm not saying this as a criticism, AA. I'm saying you are looking at this amid the slop pool.
To come back to the point, though, Horace, the hyper-real position is that all of those things, raise the colours, the memes, the Amelia, are actually engaging in something that's moving the Overton window, that's making a difference, that means we're winning, that you're dominating the discourse, yada, yada, yada. That is what I'm talking about. Whether you engage with it or not, that is the view that I'm critiquing on the channel, and that is the view that, so, I mean, in a way, you're kind of like making the libertarian thing. Well, I don't take drugs, and I don't. I have self-control, so what's the problem?
Okay.
But it's like, well, okay, but we're still talking about something that is a kind of very common talking point. Even amongst people who are quite adjacent to you.
I'll just quickly add to that, Horace, before you go ahead. I mean, a few years ago, we talk about, Yarvin's notion of the cathedral and the kind of assemblage of the discourse by the interaction of, academia, government, media, etc. It's just that the consensus engine now is this synthesis that comes out of these online feedback loops, this hysteria. Obviously those other elements are still there, and they to some extent draw off whatever the current thing is, but it feels like it's actually a smaller pool of a smaller kind of cyclonic formation of ideas that are just things that are recycled online, rather than interactions with whatever's coming out of the academy or what's coming out of civil society organizations or politicians as ideological thinkers even. That's what I wanted to add.
Yeah, I'm sure X is bad for that. They have like more than 10 years ago leaned their users towards the reactions to very recent events.
Yeah.
I think that stuff is largely to say evanescent would be putting it kindly, right?
Exactly. Can I ask you though? Can I ask you though? What I mean, we've been talking for a while, but I'm interested. What's the sort of, as it were, the Horus? What diagnosis of where we're at? The point that you're identifying, issues you've got with what AA is saying, but what's the sort of case that, as you see it, how do you see where we are right now?
What, in terms of like
the sort of impasse that we're in? I guess there's a sense of energy that's being built up in a pressure cooker. It may feel like it has somewhere to go in certain political vehicles or certain cultural moments, but everything is still kind of stymied, and there's a great deal of frustration in the air that's been expressed in this discussion in the last couple of weeks. And I just wondered, do you have a sense of if you like, where the positive vision might be, where things might go? I mean, a lot of my perception about this is AA talked about the hauntology at the beginning. The idea is that I think as the present has become more and more flattened, there is no sense of the future anymore. Not like there was when I were a lad, and it feels like people are kind of struggling to articulate anything because they kind of don't have a sense of what a future looks like. There are movements that are sort of wanting to draw us in a ideological direction. This formula, this prescription will take us where we want to go, or this cultural movement like Anglo-futurism will take us where we want to go. But there isn't a shared sense of where we can conceivably go as a society that is something real and positive and felt. So we seem to be stuck is what I'm saying. And do you have a sense of defining or shaping or giving contours to what that stuckness is and what we need to do if we're talking about solutions or just directions to go in?
Was it Panama? Was it you saying the other day that you grew up in a generation where the future kind of doesn't exist? It's like amusingly bleak. It resonates. I mean, like I'm sort of between you and Simon's age, I guess, but I think we're in a situation where, well, I don't see it as power just operates according to power. There is a certain ideology that the people involved may or may not believe in, but we're living in the age that started in the 30s, or at least by 1940, of what I'd call anti-fascism or anti-racism. And it doesn't matter whether the people in power, some of them believe in it, some of them don't, some of them just sort of wield it. But you do have to conform to that ideology to be in anywhere in power. And I mean, even low levels, like in any position of power, you've got to at least silently accept it, if not actively enforce it. I don't believe that for that reason, I don't believe that those in power are neutral about ideology. They have a particular ideology, and that characterizes who can be included in anything, in power, also in the media and the sort of periphery of power, I suppose. And that is, like, I mean, a lot of people sort of smugly celebrate what they call the day of the pillow and stuff, and that's dying off with the boomers. Okay, but the people in power will carry it on because it is kind of part of their power, and they are defined by who they exclude. Like, if they start including people, they, in that sense, cease to exist. If they start to include ordinary people who don't want the country flooded with Indians and so on. So we're still living in that. We're still, in that sense, living in 1945, like, for all that's changed. However, one thing that I think, it doesn't look like people are, as it were, waking up from that particularly fast. I mean, some are, some aren't. I don't particularly welcome the death of the boomers. I don't think that solves the problem. But what I think is just going to cut across all this is that, like, we're in a stage where I know this doesn't mean much to some people, I don't know, but like we're in a stage where in the last week the US has started to basically try and do yield curve control on its lending, on its bonds. We're at a stage where I don't know, there's going to be some sort of impossibility of borrowing. Like I've talked about this before, right? Gavin Bobby, I put it the Gavin Bobby scenario, and that is maybe literally going to unmake the state. I understand how extreme this sounds, and perhaps also wishful for a libertarian who wants the state gone anyway. I don't know. Like I'd encourage people to sort of look into it themselves and try and figure out what happens as government borrowing just gets more and more expensive. But I just think if they come to a point where they can't borrow anymore, then they can't spend anymore. Then there's a sudden extreme contraction in government spending, including maybe like the police ceasing to exist. I don't know. Like I don't know what happens. Lights going off, and then you've got problems with food supply and God knows what else, right? And you've got then people fighting and then probably separating out along ethnic lines. I just think that could start within a few years. I expect an unprecedentedly large financial contraction within the next 3 years or 2 or 3 years, right? I think it's beginning already, and like I reckon the crunch point is 2 years from now. I don't know why, but that's my back of the fag packet estimation. And when that happens, it's just all the existing questions of politics can just get cut through and sort of invalidated very quickly. If the current people in power can't enforce their power, which they need police and council staff and so on to do, right? The people that we currently obey. If that was to evaporate, I know how extremely unlikely that seems, how alien that is from what we're used to. Then people are just not going to think along the same lines. They are just suddenly going to think, who do I trust? Who's not going to break into my house if I stop watching them, right? Like who's not going to go after my daughter? Well, they're generally going to organise along ethnic lines, which is a horrible thing to say for like mixed race people. Where do they stand? I don't know. And all the people who are like, in one way or another committed to the existing order. So is this answering your question? Like, I just think there's the anti-racism thing, and then there's just the possibility of the existing regime continuing to operate. And I struggle to exactly describe how.
Well, a lot of political questions will become immaterial as materiality. It becomes more destabilized.
Well, this is. I mean, people say, "Oh, you haven't got any hope," but this is actually my point. Is that. Well, no, it's just that ignore the news because things will change quicker than you think they will. There'll be more opportunities down there. There'll be more actual reasons to organise than there are now. The problem with this exact moment of 2026 is, in my opinion, there's no play, right? The game, if you like, is at a point where there are no sensible moves. You just have to wait.
Yeah, so as that, I agree. So as it pertains to the question of, I don't know, was anyone asking this, like whether to organise politically and stuff? I mean, not that, like, say if we say like Scrump and Evelyn, they're by no means saying don't do anything. They're saying party politics is a complete waste of energy and time, worse than doing nothing. But there are things you can do. You can build this socially. You can build this commercially. You can, develop networks of people. That's all sound advice. I strongly encourage people to do all those things, and I hope people already are. I also encourage people, like things like what the Woodlander is doing, but that's going to be very small scale. I mean, how much land is there? How much land is there that people can acquire? Like it's very good. It's very good. Like those people will survive disasters that will destroy me. But on the other end, I don't see it as like by all means, some hundreds, some thousands of people can do that. But how many of us can do that? Like, it's the same as when Nick Griffin was counselling people basically retreat to places like Hungary and Poland where they're not hostile to white people, which is changing now anyway, right? They've both got new governments and stuff. But he was saying those are good places to survive for the next few centuries until La Reconquista Part 2 can begin. I just think that's imaginary. You've no idea what the future holds. You can't predict 10 years ahead, let alone 100.
So find some way to preserve your anti-fragility. Let's say all of what you're saying.
Whatever people, survival. Think survival. Yeah.
Do I detect you might be saying, but that's no reason to abdicate from the political economy.
Because I don't know that the disasters that I predict, I think they're likely. But what if governments can survive? Then we do need, the way I see it with political parties is they're an opportunity to undermine to chip away at, to contribute to the destruction of the existing oligarchy, provided, of course, that they're not in fact just controlled from the top and seducing you all into something false. Like, yeah, obviously that would negate that effect. But if you've identified correctly that they are somewhat outside, and that's why I think, Restore is worth some support, although I don't go along with all this sort of cheesiness that there is among some supporters. But I do believe it's worth some support because it clearly is annoying and like it's somewhat of a concern for the regime, although probably quite a small one. And because it is normalising, I agree. Like, by all means, maybe mock the idea of we're moving the Overton window, but normalising ideas, I think that is a real thing. Spreading the idea that, yes, we should send back 20 million. I just keep saying to people, on social media, 20 million, 20 million have to go back. Just keep normalising that. Just trying to do my little bit. It's a tiny bit, obviously, but just trying to spread that idea. I've seen other people pick up on it, and other people saying the same thing. So it has some effect among a few hundred people or whatever. But just, I do think that like talking points, it's like a cheesy sort of spad phrase in a way, but like affecting what lines people talk along is a thing that can be done on social media. We do have some effect in that area, and one MP saying that is a lot more than zero. Like one MP saying somewhat rebellious things, like demographic replacement should not happen. That is rebellious. That is outside the system. I believe that is worth it. That does do some good. Whether they can take over the country, obviously 100 times more doubtful, and especially so if, yes, they massively overestimate their own popularity, as in Makerfield, for instance. That's an embarrassing mistake. There's loads of other things. Lowe himself, there's things to criticise. The people he's appointed, there's massive problems, and so on and so on. But I don't believe that it's nothing. I think the idea that it's nothing and it makes no difference whatsoever, or that it's automatically going to be absorbed back into the system, or that it has no chance of achieving anything, is just taking things too far. I don't know if I've answered.
All right. Well, given the nature of today's discussion, and we were answering this guy Soka City at length, he has sent a number of super chats. So I thought, Simon, just for today, we'll do the super chats now, and then we'll do Kurto in a kind of change with normal protocol. I should mention that one in Spengler, whose catchphrase, let's not forget, is optimism is cowardice, there is one of the deepest black pills written in any book ever, which is the scenario where things collapse obviously won't be pleasant for anybody to live through, right? But there's kind of hope at the end of it. So Horace's scenario of, a kind of collapse of the government or something would be a terrible thing to live through for any individual. But right, but there's still kind of light at the end of the tunnel because maybe things might be sorted out. Spengler says, yeah, that's one way it can go. But there's also the scenario of the 1,000-year deep freeze, which happened in China, where China went through a number of these different cycles, and then it literally entered a 1,000-year deep freeze where basically nothing changed, right? From, it was something ridiculous from like 200 BC until, the Song dynasty or something. Almost nothing changed in China at all. They didn't create; they were just in a long stasis. So,
and then the Mongols came.
Yeah, and then the Mongols came, right? So, but what I'm saying is there is the prospect of the 1,000-year kind of like people are still watching X Factor in the year, 3021 or something. It's still like X Factor and Strictly Come Dancing, and almost nothing has changed in that sort of time. If you live it. So I in a strange way, like the idea that things could collapse is more hopeful than the 1,000-year stasis. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, in that sense, maybe like doomerism is cowardice. Like glimmer of hope, doomerism is I guess acceleration is cowardice in that sense, right? As in welcoming the collapse is actually a terrible mistake. You're hoping that the collapse is, people like say the only way out is through, sort of thing. Like people are hoping that their own sort of stoicism is a secret is a secret way to smuggle in optimism, sort of thing, and therefore cowardice.
Well, I mean, this is a thing, is that my book Prophets of Doom is somewhat mislabeled, because all of the Prophets of Doom are actually weirdly hopeful. And so this is one of the bizarre things about cyclical history, right? Is that anybody who gets into cyclical history, right? Who were the people who were into cyclical history? Theodore Roosevelt, who was like, not on my watch. And he basically, he was mates with Brooks Adams, who wrote a book of cyclical history. And he was like, I'm going to become the hero. Certain mid-century German was into cyclical history, actually met Spengler, right? So this is one of those weird things that that cyclical history actually is not doomerism. It's a call to action. Even though it sounds counterintuitive, it appeals to the need for the heroic, basically, is what all of those guys in Prophets of Doom, ultimately, even Eveler, aren't actually black pillars in that sense. They simply say things have to get better before they can get worse. But in order to get out of the muck, you're going to need men of heroic will, essentially. So, it's kind of like that line, optimism is cowardice, is like in a weird way, Spengler himself, he wrote this book, Hour of Decision. He says, like, well, look, you don't go like just lay that keel over and die. You have to fight to the last man. Like I can't remember the exact. He says like at Pompeii. Remember then that volcano exploded, and there were still those two guards, members of the Imperium. Spengler says, like, look, they have to stay there until, even if everybody's dead, they have to fight to the last, even though it's futile, even though it's pointless, even though their city's in ashes. The heroic thing to do is to stay and fight. So, in that respect, Spengler is not this kind of keel over and die pessimist that people may think of. He's actually, has quite a lot of, or at least in his rhetoric, he's saying you don't do that. And even Eveler, he was still, trying to train the right-wing youth after World War II, when all was lost from his point of view. So, yeah, it's kind of it's counterintuitive, that whole cyclical history thing. But anyway, let's get to these. Let's get to the
one more question about cyclical history, though. I read some of that Strauss and Howe book. Is it The Fourth Turning, right?
Yeah.
Like, they are quite, in their intro, where they are the purpose of the intro is mainly to argue the case for cyclical over linear history, right? It's actually arguing for cyclical history itself before the substance of the book.
Yeah.
And they do it very acerbically, as though they're in a sort of a fight, and so it's even got a bit personal. Did you notice that? Like, they're like really caning the linear theorists, whoever they are.
Yeah. Well, there's a good reason for that, though. I didn't include Strauss and Howe in Prophets of Doom because it's a little bit pop, and it doesn't. You can't stick Strauss and Howe next to Spengler and Eveler and so on.
It's very modern. Yeah,
it just looks stupid, and it's just thin. In my original conception for the book, I was going to include people like Peter Hitchens and and I just thought you can't stick these journalists and kind of pop writers next to Carlyle and Eveler and so on. It's just silly. But the reason that they're so defensive is because the cyclical theorists came in for an absolute hammering after World War II. Arnold Toynbee is one of the best-selling historians of all time. That book of his, A Study of History, sold in the hundreds of thousands of copies. And Oswald Spengler, Decline of the West, at one point was read by all learned men all around the world. Like, these books sold in the hundreds of thousands, which for dense academic text like that is pretty high sales. They outsold Populist Delusion, and that sold pretty well. Yeah, these were huge. Right, these were huge. What I'm saying is, these were there were very high sales for such dense and learned works. I'll just put it that way. But anyway, after World War II, and this is why I keep on going on about this book, Who Paid the Piper. the CIA were like much more hands-on in where they were going to allow cultural discussion to go. And it's revealed in that book that not AJP Taylor, who's the other one? Hugh Trevor Roper. Hugh Trevor Roper, right?
God.
Hugh Trevor Roper was a CIA agent, right? Or he's working on behalf of the CIA.
Don't you mean the IRD?
Well, no, like
Okay.
literally on the payroll of the CIA,
Right.
funded by, like, literally being run by James Burnham himself, right? Which is really, like, again, when I read this book, it blew my mind. But anyway, that review by Hugh Trevor Roper, he lays into Toynbee to an extraordinary extent, to the point where he starts his critical review of A Study of History. And bear in mind, this took Toynbee 30 years to write, and it's 12 volumes long. And he starts the review by imagining that Toynbee had built a statue to himself to praise himself as a god. And then he literally just lays into him page after page, calls him a Hitlerite. Like, it's a demolition job on Toynbee's reputation, which basically, like, within the academy, killed cyclical theory dead, because Hugh Trevor Roper, this, like, really well-known guy, laid into Toynbee. Toynbee's reputation never recovered. By association, then Spengler kind of fell out of fashion. And so there was a very, very robust progressive reaction after the war to linear, to cyclical theory. And I think that Strauss and Howe must have known that. And I suspect that's why they were so defensive, because
I had no
it's one
idea
of
about
those areas that the regime really has got its eyes on. Doesn't like cyclical history at all. So, yeah.
Huh.
Which, I mean, again, you'd think, why would they care about something like that? Like, questions of historiography, but apparently they're really important for the regime. So,
Well, who thought they would take a stance on, abstract expressionism versus, whatever? Yeah. So that book is an absolute revelation. Anyone who's not read it, or if you just want a short version, you can watch the YouTube documentary based on it as well. I can't remember what it's called, but if you just look up Francis Stoner Saunders, who played the Piper, there's a 1 hour documentary on YouTube as well.
oh, I haven't seen that. I might check it out. I'll definitely do a video for the Great Thinker series.
There's also she also did a couple of talks when that book went out, but there is a documentary as well based on it, which people might want to look at.
Interesting. Okay. All right. So let's do these super chats, and then we'll do Kurto. Okay. Esoteric Elderman says, as yesterday, Horus, Hat, and Simon, why oppose our elites? Why do you guys oppose our elites? Quick answers.
They're our enemies.
Ditto.
Well, a little bit more, because they're parts of a system that are evil and immoral and cause terrible things to happen.
Because they're not one of me. Okay. LSSM says press F. I think that's for Dolly Parton. Okay, Soka City. I'm going to read all of his now, because we did start this responding to him. He sent 10 Canadian dollars to say, AA, you are a very inspiring person, and the recent backlash from your fans reflects this. I don't know if there's been a backlash from my fans, quote unquote, other than you. I mean, maybe there has been, but I'm not on Twitter, so I can't really see it all. So I don't. But I haven't really noticed any particular uptick in backlash in my comments or anything like that. That being said, you belong on the political right for every reason that conservatism exists. Quit moonlighting.
I agree. The centre left phase was bollocks. Like, you are on the right, just accept it. It's fine.
The centre left thing was me trying to say I do not sit on the same side as Douglas Murray. Okay, and then
I agree with that.
Anyway, so City says we must respect our past. We cannot constantly reinvent who we are. It just doesn't work. God bless you all, and rest in peace, Dolly Parton. Morgoth just absolutely nailed her obituary, of course. Yeah, that was a good article by Morgoth, I have to say. He does occasionally put his finger on something that you're feeling in the moment. And he certainly reflected what I was feeling about Dolly Parton.
He's remarkably good at writing about things that I don't give a shit about. I never would anyone else. I wouldn't have clicked on an article about Dolly Parton, but I did, and it was really good.
Yeah, no, he's got a knack for that. He's good on culture, I would say. Morgoth.
You can see the meaning in the fragment that gives you the bigger picture of the whole. That's the point.
Well, one of the reasons I've always called him a poet is because I always remember. I think when I was studying Eliot and Pound. I think it's T.S. Eliot somewhere says that like the thing that demarcates a poet from other people is that they can see the links between things that don't seem connected. Right, things that you wouldn't necessarily put together, they can draw that connection. That's a kind of poetic way of thinking, and Morgoth is particularly good at that. I would say he's good at making those. I mean, I'll never forget that speech he did where he started talking about. I still remember it because it's vivid. He started the speech talking about putting the whole ritual of putting the DVD into the DVD player as opposed to pressing on the street on a stream on Netflix or something else. And it's just like you can kind of relate to that little moment, but then where he took that was quite remarkable. That is a particular way of thinking that Morgoth has that very few people have. Chris Primer says, Anakin, you were the chosen one. I don't know if he's. The thing is, I have always maintained that I am not, in any respect, a leader or anything but a scholar. And you will know because you've known me for years at this point. Have I ever said anything different from that?
No, you've always, to your credit, maintained that line that you're just a humble scholar. Many people have attacked you for it, but it's been.
I think people think I'm doing the Richard III thing. Oh, I couldn't possibly be the king. I just want to study my books. I'm not doing Richard III though. I genuinely, I just know myself, and I know that I am not. It takes like people have to understand what it is to be a leader of men, and what it is to kind of be somebody like a Vladimir Lenin. Like actually really into combat politics, or even somebody who's into like actual politics. I know you know me, how I have not the personality for this. I just couldn't. I'd flame out in a week. People would just piss me off too much. I don't have the skill set to do it. I've got a skill set to do the lectures I do and write fairly provocative essays, and that's my skill set. Of course, I'm trained as a scholar. And that's why I became a scholar.
I think the problem is that people are looking for leaders at this current moment. The problem is, lead you to do what, right? We have intellectual leaders like yourself, and people are willing to be schismatic and not listen and not bother with that. Okay, people want to follow someone like Farage, who's obviously just a fake inside the system, and anybody that was genuinely outside the system would get crushed. So this is what I mean in the sense that this isn't like a binary thing where we just have to be led out of the mess. All right, there's so many different layers to this. This is the reason that it's frustrating to watch people just pretend it's all about vibes and we can just meme our way out. As long as we just keep hoping and like a lot of the backlash against the quote unquote elite theorists over Restore was you just didn't it was your negative energy, right? The negative energy has brought it back. It's like, well, obviously it didn't. Whatever Rupert Lowe was up to was not affected by academic agent on Twitter or Bamblast, right? This is just silly, right? And but it's people looking for someone to blame. So I mean, it's until we're in a position where we can actually have a leader, then there's actually a physically achievable goal. Then it's not really wise to look for them. And also, I don't think anybody that I've seen in these spaces would even want to follow a leader. They'd be schismatic.
This
leaders
is the thing.
have authority. You have to sit down and listen to them.
I'm old enough to remember when people were like yearning for Baron Trump. Do you remember the Baron Trump memes? Baron Trump is going to be the new king. And we've now seen. I mean, I'm trying not to have a go at Bo here, but he did say maybe it's Charlie Downs' grandson, right? And somebody did comment on the last stream, and it did make me chuckle. He said somebody just put dryly, it's a lot of pressure to put on someone who's not even born yet. Poor old Charlie Downs' unborn grandson. But I
I'm
do
pretty
think,
sure. I think what Bo meant. I assume what Bo meant by that. I haven't asked him, but I assume he meant like expect a long struggle. Expect that we may.
yeah, but I do think it probably shows how much people are crying out for. Some people really do want to see that leader, but you can't really see it on the horizon. You can't really see it there. And whenever anybody tries to step up to the mantle, it ends up looking vaguely farcical. I mean,
Yeah.
We mentioned Dickie Spencer earlier. His lowest moment, sadly, and this is again, look. I've always said this, and I told this to Richard Spencer on a stream himself. I said, Dickie, like, you should have been writing moderately interesting, like literary essays or something, not kind of LARPing as the next kind of, the next kind of fascist leader or something. He got carried away. He kind of went to it, like, he just didn't, he stepped forward. He said, I'll be the leader for a moment. And it kind of ended up looking stupid. You know what I mean? If anybody remembers all of that. And this is the thing, really, is that it will look farcical and it will look silly until it doesn't, until actually there will be, and then you'll know the moment. But we're kind of not. I just don't see it in our current.
We've got a failing model of leadership. I think what people want is more than a leader, isn't it? It's that they want a king. And I'm not saying I'm talking for monarchists here. I'm saying they want a kind of leader who is unlike the model that we've got in politics now, where leaders are really essentially, rallying points for the capture of vested interests to put forward certain kinds of, being Trojan horses for certain kinds of commercial and supranational interests, let's say. And what people actually want is a king who has wise counselors and listens to wise counselors, so to speak, and is able to synthesize that into a broad leadership, a broad sort of almost magical sense of leadership. What we've got are essentially politicians who don't have so much wise counselors. They have one worm-tongue, cynical Machiavel whispering in their ear, and they feel very remote. They're not in the principles of even, reductive corporate psychology. They're not using the intelligence of the whole. They are being sequestered and kept in a kind of papal atmosphere by people.
I'm not picking on Restore again here, but I do think people have had the sense now, because it's gone on long enough, that I think with Restore, people had the sense that they may be able to affect it in some way, because some of us know the lads, because it's like, well, how many parties where you can just get on the blower with the central planning team at any time. And I think I've noticed frustration. But Bo and Nate, since I, like the algo, because I clicked on their videos a few times, they keep on coming up in my feed. And I saw one where Nate had a kind of bit of a moan about Howard Cox and some of his issues. And he was saying, like, look, I sent Restore a message about all of this. I wrote all my recommendations down. He felt particularly passionate because he's really into cars, right? This is Bo's co-host, Nate, now, okay? And he said, like, I'm really into cars. I know this issue inside and out. I literally wrote a long email saying all the things that should be done, and it didn't get anywhere, right? So you've gotten in, but it doesn't feed up. It doesn't translate into what Rupert does. And I think that I mean, I'm not saying it's the lad's fault. But I'm saying that is going to be a frustration that people feel going forward, that there's like a disconnect there between Charlie and the lads and what actually ends up happening, because not like, by right, I mean, Nate, say what you want about him, he's a fairly influential guy online. He's kind of got his finger on the, it's the base, right? It's the base, but the base is not really listened to, and that's really on the small scale of Restore. But you saw that same thing kind of like blown up many times by in MAGA. It's the same thing, really, where people were like, well, look, I know the guy in the department there. We're actually, like, I've got an in there, and yet it still doesn't feed up. It still doesn't translate into what Trump actually ends up doing.
And this
You
is a
know why
broad characteristic of English institutional failure for decades now, that you in the trench who can see what's going on just over on the front line need to get a message back up to the rear echelon and tell them what's happening, and you can't shove anything back up the pipe to switch them on to what's really going on.
Hey, what you described just there is exactly why there's that sort of slogan or call for Charlie to be made the deputy leader, because it would violate whoever's trying to gatekeep us out. Obviously, I'm talking about presumably Alistair Harrison, except I don't know that because no one ever confirms.
Yeah,
No one even confirms it even
he's the
exists.
block. It's speculated that
But
he's the block. Yeah.
yeah, but what I said to Nate, I replied to Nate a couple of times on Twitter, and I said this to other people as well. It was like, how does anybody contact Rupert Lowe himself? Like, replying to him on Twitter is presumably just read by whoever tweets, which is not him. You can tell it's not him. They write in a different voice.
Yeah.
If you call it, I don't know if anyone's got a number. Is it Lowe's number or is it a number for trying to get in touch with Lowe? If you email him, no, I think that just goes to that Alistair Harrison guy. All the emails from Rupert Lowe are actually written by the same person who does the Twitter, presumably Alistair Harrison. So he is like the Martin Bormann. He is the gatekeeper. Like he controls who gets to talk to Lowe at all. It seems, as far as I can tell. I mean, there must be some people who got Lowe's number, whatever. But so whatever. But if Charlie Downs was made deputy, he probably won't be. It's like a transitional demand. It's like a Trotskyist transitional demand. It's like we're demanding the one thing that the gatekeeper, doesn't want to grant.
This happens quite a lot. Do you remember that Sue Gray? She did it to Keir Starmer.
Mm.
She was literally blocking anybody having access to the Prime Minister. And so, even Blair couldn't get through. I mean, she was out in her ear after a while. But
this is one thing that a chief of staff has to do. This, right? They have to gatekeep most people out because there's just not enough time.
Yeah, but
but I think in the case with Lowe and his guy, Lowe just completely trusts him, both his intentions and his judgment, and just lets him do what he wants, including probably coming to him and saying in a very brief message like, "Check out this guy Howard Cox. He's prepared to join us. He would be a good asset. He's on board with us. Do you want me to appoint him?" And it just says yes, just ticks it and stuff like that. So I reckon that's probably how some of these dreadful Zio Boomer appointments have been made. It's just a trusted person. It doesn't have to be that Harrison, I don't know, but some trusted person just comes to him and says, "Here's a quick profile, check it out, tick him off," And Lowe's just like, "Yep, nice one, good work," and doesn't look into it. Maybe. Or maybe Lowe is the problem, I don't know.
Soka City says he sent $100 Canadian here. So he was upset with me, but obviously not that upset because he sent all this money. He says, there's $100. I won 3 scholarships at my university. Please interview Alex Craner about what the City of London actually is. Thanks for all that you have done and will do. Well, thank you very much, Soka City. I'm very pleased that this is the caliber of young man that we have, scholarship winner. I'm pleased for you, Soka City. I hope you the scholarship see you in good stead. So that's great news. On Alex Craner, I mean, I don't know if Alex Craner would talk to me. That's the first thing to say. You asked me a lot about Alex Craner. Horace, me and you, I feel like we went over this and over it and over it.
We did indeed.
What episode was that?
Soka City, you might want to watch that. It was something like, does the City of London control the world, or something? I don't know. It was about a year ago, roughly, or earlier this year, maybe. I can't remember. It was we were talking about. I don't think that either of them were in the thumbnail or title, but it was Alex Craner and Tom Luongo's theory that the City of London, especially Lloyd's of London, for some reason, controls Israel, Qatar, the USA, everyone really. It's fucking ludicrous, to be honest. Don't want to disparage your supporters, but
also apparently he's not young. He's actually 45, which in today's meta is kind of young. I remember I had a T-shirt. What was it like? 50 is the new 30. Have you heard that, Simon? 50 is the new 30.
I'm hoping it is.
You're still a young man.
I think 50 is the new 80.
You're not over the hill yet, Simon. That's great.
Yeah, very happy about that.
Phosphorus Anatomy has sent 1,000 jewels and a goat trophy. Lawrence Hendry has sent 1,000 jewels and a corgi. I still don't really understand what the jewels are, but thanks. Chris Primer says, I always felt that things really started falling apart after that picture of Sargon and everyone in front of the Kekistani flag. God's sake. Does anybody remember that meme? The Kekistan?
Oh, yeah.
Flag?
And the other one.
Get in, Normie.
Wasn't there another meme about like how? Oh, it was funny. It's still shared a bit now. Like it's someone like Sargon Milo Yiannopoulos.
Is it Nigel Farage?
And a couple of others. There's like a Mount Rushmore or something. I can't remember what it is. Like
I think they're all in a car. It's like Sargon, Nigel Farage.
We're saving Western civilization.
Is it Dankula? Is Dankula in the car? I can't.
No, it's just a frog.
It's like a kid asks, the one I'm talking about, the kid asks his dad, like, who are these guys? And he's like, well, they're the guys who saved Western civilization or something like that. It's really funny. It's
but
classically overestimated.
Do you think maybe Carl's got a bit of the Ricky Gervais syndrome in that, like, he sort of genuinely feels like that is actually what he's there to do because he was told that at the beginning or what? I don't know. Speculating, but that may explain sort of the attitude.
I don't know. I mean, I'm still friendly with Carl. I mean, obviously, I don't speak to him that much because I'm not on Twitter anymore. He did email me, but he hasn't remembered to. Like, we don't talk every day like we used to. My honest view of Carl is that I think that because I was trying to persuade him not to go to the Tommy rally, right? But he was like, look, have you ever stood on a stage in front of 100,000 people, And I think that he's got a little bit of that kind of, there's an allure to it for him, like you can, there is something to be said for, it's almost like being a rock star or something. You can stand on a stage and command 100,000 people.
So it's ego then?
Well, I get, but I guess it's something, it's something beyond ego, isn't it? It's like it's whatever it is that Bowie's singing about on Ziggy Stardust, Simon. It's like, give me your hands.
It's not an excuse, is it?
Give me your hands because you're wonderful. Something like this.
It's not an excuse.
Funny enough, I think Elon Musk ended up overrunning, so Sargon was kind of cut short or something in that Tommy rally, or he ended up not going on or something, which is kind of in a way I think it was good for him that he didn't go on there, but it is where it is.
Sucks for the people who went to see him talk though.
Yeah, I'm sure there were loads of people there to see him, but yeah. I don't know. I don't have that same thing. I don't think, there's the adoring crowd. I must go and stand in front of them and talk. Always kind of vaguely uncomfortable at these things, as anybody who's ever been to an event where I talk will know, right? Okay. Gazmo says, I'm 150 days clean of Twitter. I'm 150 day clean. Twitter quitter, and no fapper here. So there we go. He's taken my academic agent mindset on, and then some. He quit Twitter, and he's quit, and he's gone no fap. I could congratulate you. You're part of the true club here. The true club. Cancel culture is given a 10. Gazmo says thanks for the recent lectures. AJ says hologram of Herring and his puppet in 3026 looped. Imagine if Richard Herring is still there in 1,000 years. Breon Hunk TAA is inevitable. That's the Twitter
Addict Anonymous.
Did you see Scrump was starting to Buckley was starting to cave?
Yeah,
he'll be there. Work on him, work on him.
I'm still struggling with my urges.
Work on Evelyn too. If you can get into Evelyn's ear, Evelyn can get into Scrump's ear. We can, and then when Scrump is gone, Blamblas will be like, I'm the last man. He'll have to go as well. Yes.
Yeah, but the problem is, how am I supposed to stay in touch with Mr. D if I leave Twitter? That's the problem. I can't
email him.
He's not going to give me his email.
Get him to set up a sock account, sock email.
Oh.
Byron Hunks, Coney says, I'd like to see you make a video honestly critiquing Tony Robbins on the AA mindset. you have made some critiques before, but across different live streams. Well, my mother was very into Tony Robbins in the 90s. She had all his books and went, like, she did the thing. She walked across the coals. She was scared of heights and stood on the top of this very, very tall pillar and overcome all her fears and all of that sort of stuff. So clearly Tony Robbins does something right. But I feel that there may be an element a spiritual element that may be missing in Robbins. It's all a little bit materialist and kind of cheesy and American, and you can awaken the giant within. It's good. It's good. Don't get me wrong; it will work for many, many people, but I think that you kind of need more. Otherwise, those sorts of that kind of self-help has got a kind of emptiness at its heart, where they just end up endlessly doing that forever. You know what I mean? So there's a little bit of that culture that it's got its limitations as well. But it does work. It does work. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it doesn't, but yeah, that would be my immediate critique.
For people who remember Century of the Self, there's a short clip of him saying, "Make your life a masterpiece."
Do you remember that film with Tom Cruise, Magnolia?
Respect.
Respect the tame the respect the cock.
Yeah. Excellent.
Coney also says this moment feels like a perfect moment to pivot away from slop politics and towards culture. Go and see the Exhibition 3 and Base creates plays. Well, I'm really pleased that Hat and Simon are getting an audience for those streams.
Yeah.
I'm very pleased. I'd more than a few hundred is what I mean. There's been thousands too.
Yeah.
That's good. Great to see.
We're there to rehabilitate people.
Well, remember my slogan is, how can you say you want to save Western civilization when you don't even know what Western civilization is? That's people.
I see you guys as like sort of adventurous, like cave tunnelers. Like, what's it called? Like pothole. Like you're sort of exploring underground caves, and yet underground, just unexpected by anybody. Yeah. You've discovered a great underground lake of Jonathan Mead's fans.
That's right.
I've never even heard of Jonathan Mead.
6,000 people. We've got 6,000 people watching that Brutalist one. People love Meads. They all come for him.
Yeah. I saw you had Apostolic Majesty on the other day as well.
Very talking about the Jews. Yeah,
that's a good guest. That's a top quality guest.
Very much.
Oh yeah.
Of course, we must reiterate our great love for the nation of Israel. Anyway, go on, Had.
I was going to say, I almost felt like having AM in was a bit like like the old Noel's house party or something, or like Dick and Dom. It was a bit like if David Bowie had walked onto one of those. It was sort of like I felt really out of my day. It was like, oh, this is serious guest, and we're here, with our riffing, and
it's very intimidating. I daren't say anything. Yeah.
You could feel the rays of intellect kind of emanating from his head.
Yeah. That sort of stuff did happen as well. What was that show with Wonky Donkey? Was that Ant and Dec? What was that thing?
I think that
it was like It was like a Saturday morning, like kid show, and I think Ant and Dec presented it. And one of their set things was Wonky Donkey, and then all of a sudden, like Johnny Depp would walk in, and he'd be like doing like child skits with Ant and Dec, and that was a really weird show because they had like worldwide famous guests on there, and it was just like a shit kids thing. I don't think Bowie ever did it, but it was kind of like in that kind of ballpark. Anyway, more jewels have been sent by Dave Harris, who sounds like a kind of 70s DJ.
Whispering Dave Harris, yeah.
Well, that's because he was one, Simon. Yeah. Lauren said did he get done for kiddie fiddling or?
No, Whispering Bob Harris, I don't think had any problems, but John Peel, I think, has been regarded as slightly suspect in retrospect, but I cannot say anything more.
A very young girlfriend, isn't that true?
Didn't David Bowie? Didn't Mick Jagger?
Yeah, I've heard that Pete Hook also went with girls like clearly underage.
Everyone was a paedophile in the 70s.
The 70s, you kind of.
It was the fashion at the time.
The dirty decade.
I mean, these things may make you a bit uncomfortable, but I remember it. I remember all sorts of sleazy sayings back in the day, like, if there's grass on the pitch and all that sort of stuff. It was kind of like, it was kind of
and
in
they
the
meant it.
It was kind
And
of
they
like
meant
in
it.
the culture in a
Oh,
way,
dear.
and it
It
was a
was.
little
It
bit.
was.
I mean, me as a kind of true metrosexual new male, I was like,
No,
but
it was
it
fairly
kind of
common for people to joke approvingly about targeting girls, like they would say for consensual, but like targeting girls, and they meant schoolgirls. Like there was just
I mean,
plenty of jokes and allusions to that all the
I
time.
remember guys. I remember being in my 20s, and there were guys who would be like, "Where you off then? Oh, gonna go hang around the school." To just basically like pick up 15-year-olds and things like that,
Yeah,
and they would as well because they had a car
Yeah.
and they were 20, and so of course they get a shake.
And I was friends with a woman who at 14 she had a boyfriend of about 20. Yeah,
It happens. It does happen. That's not to excuse.
No, she
John
said there was
Dee or
nothing wrong
whatever.
with it, which was funny.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
Well, if you want an in-depth look into this phenomenon, you can check out the stream on Roman Polanski that Simon and I did some weeks ago. Clive James.
are you going to do Rita, Sue, and Bob too at some point as well?
Might do.
That's a bit coarse.
Yeah.
Anyway.
When are you going to do something lowbrow enough for me to come along?
You name it, we'll do it.
What the history of Wonky Donkey?
We're going to
Wonky
excavate
Donkey.
the dumpster of Wonky Donkey.
We could do. I mean, I was thinking of like, I would quite like to know more about old school British wrestling, like before WWE, when it was sort of weird, like old men with like huge beer guts and rings,
always
like,
fat.
fighting each other.
Cat Weasel,
Yeah.
Cat Weasel, and
Giant
Weasel.
haystacks and Big Daddy. I was going to ask about that earlier. Just on a minor note, was there a kayfabe thing going on in British wrestling in the 70s, or was it just pure
Well,
athleticism that was done
All
sincerely?
kayfabe.
No.
Okay.
It was all fake, right? But because it was on ITV, the commentator was a guy called Kent Walton, right?
Right.
And they treated it exactly like sport.
Right.
And he was like a proper sports commentator, so it had like this legitimacy to it.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, we don't like to see that sort of thing here, But it was kind of, it was fake, but it was treated like a legit sport. But the thing is, in America, before Vince McMahon, in most parts of America, that's what wrestling was like in the 60s and the 70s as well, when it was Dory Funk Jr., who passed away recently, or Jack Briscoe, and you can still see vestiges of it in the old WCW, where Jim Ross would be like, this guy's got great amateur credentials, and he'd be going on about like the college wrestling tournaments he'd won and all that sort of stuff. So it still kind of existed a little bit in the 80s there, but Vince turned it into a cartoon, really. But yeah, World of Sport was the name of the show. And one of my favorite wrestlers, you'd actually like this, Hat, if you tracked it down, just because of the world of it. They used to work York Hall and a few other legendary venues, just seeing the people in the crowd and stuff like that. But there's a wrestler who was known as Jim Breaks, the crybaby, Jim Breaks, probably one of the best heels of all time. And he was known as a rule breaker. But his whole thing was that he'd start he'd really start moaning pretty badly if he started losing. And it's fun. It's fun. It really is fun to watch. But it's a different world. World of Sport is a different world. Anyway.
I would just say about wrestling, the kayfabe is the plot and the predetermining of what happens, but they do genuinely get beaten up. Obviously, there is like a real stunts, dangerous stunts.
Mate, if I try to suplex you, right, unless you're helping me, you're not getting up for a suplex.
Yeah, okay. Everyone's got to be in on it for a start.
Right. So yeah, they are actually taking it, but try doing a suplex in a real life situation, against the guy's will, and you won't get anywhere. So, Coney Current Year just says, Coney says is a classic line on this channel. Okay. Yes. All right. Shall we make a start then? And I should say William Regal basically took all of the elements of classic British wrestling and made it almost into like a greatest hits package for an American audience. And he took little bits of British culture, like, Rowan Atkinson and things like that, and I think William Regal is one of the great comic talents of all time, not just wrestling, but just in life in general. So yeah, he's another favourite of mine. Anyway, shall we make a start on Kurto?
Off we go.
Live scenes of the online right? No, carry on.
I tried. I was going to say I tried to work out what story the kids are doing there, and there's a couple of sort of Russian kids stories. The one I think it might be a story called Masha and the Bear. It's about a little girl called Masha who gets lost in the woods while she's playing with her friends, and she comes across a hut with a large bear in it, and the bear basically forces her to stay and do the cooking and cleaning.
That bear had kind of the energy of the of the art on the back of the the Mr. Whippy van, kind of that slightly scary, kind of evil. Simon, why couldn't Kurto have just read the script for this?
I know he is going to return with the next documentary that he does, which is probably going to be about America. And he has had people say to him, "Look, all your good ones are the ones where you do the narration." He says, "Yeah, I know. I just thought the footage was good enough with these ones to let it run."
I think this works. I think this works. This particular one has a starkness to it. That if you had Adam Curtis coming in and going, "He called us men with a ruble," it wouldn't hit the same way.
Did Kurto not narrate Shifty, that other thing?
Shifty, no, that's still footage and intertitles, as you call them on the screen. So
has his voice gone? Can he still talk? Or?
Yeah, no, he's fine. He's fine. I think it was just a stylistic thing that he wanted to do it this way. He's been trying forever to kind of run the footage longer, make it more, sort of what it's the juxtapositions of what he puts next to what else is where he's trying to, if you like, convey meaning in the artistic style that he's adopted. But I think he's responded to people who've said, "Yeah, look, we kind of like the ones with you speaking." So he'll probably bring that back.
It'd be funny if his voice, those guys who got the voice, those little, remember that guy in Alan Partridge?
Yeah.
The little voice box thing. Wouldn't hit this. Kurto wouldn't hit the same if he had that voice, would he?
Yeah. Khodorkovsky's, I've been looking to him. He's quite interesting. The intertitle Curtis has on here says that he wrote this book, Man with a Ruble, and it sort of was about rejecting all ideologies. That's not quite right. He sort of started off as being a kind of ultra-capitalist, Khodorkovsky, and essentially a civic nationalist with little bits of social and liberal democracy added in, he essentially did a famous what they call a left turn. So he tried to criticize a privatization. Because it essentially essentially cheated people out of the assets of the state, and so the word liberalism was discredited. And at the end of Trauma Zone, I think they talk about how democracy is kind of a dirty word in Russia as a result. But he was a sort of classical liberal kind of guy, Khodorkovsky. Eventually, we will see later on he's up in court. He takes over, I think, Yukos, which is the second biggest oil company. But they obviously want to relieve him of that wealth, and eventually he leaves and he moves to London, where he has been, I think, living for some time. He was first in Switzerland, and now he lives in London. But he, essentially is really kind of advocating for more or less the same neoliberal regime that the rest of us already live under, but for Russia. So yeah.
Okay. Just out of interest, when you talk about Kurto's documentary style, how does he compare? How does he compare with Mead's? And since you guys have been exploring
totally different. Mead's is really just an essayist. He's like a video essayist.
Mead's is didactic.
Yeah, he writes his script, and then there's a sort of montage of him lounging around archly in his funeral director suit.
Yeah. Mead has a sense of the comical, whereas Curtis has a sense of the sort of archly ironic. Curtis will use the footage and the words of his own subjects to make a point, whereas Mead will just tell you straight away that he thinks those people are boorish and tasteless and didn't understand modern architecture.
Yeah. I feel like Mead's is more in the playbook of that Scottish fella I got into for a while. Remember that guy on BBC iPlayer?
Forbes Robertson, wasn't it?
Forbes Robertson, because he kind of had a bit of that. Although his style, when you get used to it, he kind of lures you in, and then he starts getting more and more ranty towards the end of the documentary.
Yeah, he's a bit more grandfatherly and sort of likable in a way, where Mead's can be a bit chilly.
I still think none of them have really come close to the presentation style of Alan Wicker. I think he's still the king. Of course, what we find here is a black republic ruled by fear and corruption. No one's going to beat that.
One of my favorite Alan Wickers is when he goes to San Francisco during like the hippie era. You seen that one? That's a great one. If you haven't seen that, you track that one down. He goes and like visits some like hippie communes and things like that. And
does he do a load of LSD?
Well, I just like his subtle sense of bemusement in amongst all these. And speaking of underage sex, there's a lot of dodgy things that happen in that particular one. Anyway. I also like Clive James as a kind of
he's great.
Not only as an essayist, but as a TV essayist as well.
Would you like to come on for when we do a postcards from episode with Clive James?
Yeah, because I love that postcard series with Clive James.
I think Clive James is the master of understatement, and he seems like an everyman out of water all the time, compared with the sort of confident bluster of someone like Wicker or the sort of powerful academicism of Mead. He's sort of just, and then I went down and had a tango lesson, and cool, blimey, she was a beautiful girl.
He does a mean line in the kind of indistinct kind of stare that's Clive James. The kind of can't quite tell what he's thinking, but he's slightly befuddled by it all. Yeah, it's kind of good. While we're thinking of these sorts of characters, does that very pompous art critic Brian Sewell have any documentaries?
I'm sure he does.
Don't know. He probably has something out there, but he died such a long time ago now.
I remember him being incredibly opinionated.
Yeah,
he's almost like the polar opposite of Mead, but it's very similar personality.
I've seen a series of him going to various places in Europe, looking at this sculpture, that painting, and stuff, and remarking on it very opinionatedly.
He despised modern art, didn't he? He was like into his classicism. Yeah. So
I think I distantly recall some footage of him inside the Tate Modern Turbine Hall being very amusingly dismissive of it. Yeah, I don't know where it's from. Distant memory.
Yeah, he would take pleasure in scathing critiques of stuff. Yeah.
I think that was the thing. That is kind of thing we're missing. Public intellectuals who did have a sort of a style of critique that could be quite waspish. acidic, and
Yes.
I mean,
it was
there is
amusing.
nothing. There's nothing worse than someone, call them a critic or not, who likes everything. I mean,
Yeah.
I remember for somehow I was listening to Radio 1 for some years, and that Zane Lowe guy and Joe Wiley as well, they just praise everything. There's nothing they don't like.
It's very
like,
annoying, that.
What the
Very annoying.
Well, they're obviously just working for a fucking record industry, despite being on the BBC. They're obviously just working for the record companies, but it's grotesque.
I think social media played a role on that, because I saw it happen in various different circles, is that when you've got critical voices that get piled on, so then people become cowardly, don't want to upset the fans and things like that. So, in a way, it's kind of good. I mean, I even miss Will. I mean, I know I've dissed his writing in the past, but I even miss Will Self for his just balls out, opinionated nature, and his just capacity just to destroy something on release, even though everybody else loves it.
We've kind of adopted him as a patron saint of the channel, because he's funny, he's amusing, he's interesting. Some of his positions are absolutely terrible. I mean, there's no denying it. But he writes in an interesting way, and he speaks in an interesting way, and we just like that forthrightness.
Yeah, kind of miss the arc. I mean, I guess Morrissey is also a character like this, but they're getting fewer and more far between, aren't they?
Yeah. Just to add on a little bit about Khodorkovsky here. I mean, there's an interesting relation that he has to. We've seen in earlier episodes the non-conformist dissident art in the Soviet Union, in the late stages of the Soviet Union. There's was an interesting article I picked up on from a site, the FPA.org, the Foreign Policy Association. I think it seems to be a bit of a Washington consensus kind of publication online, but it talks about the nature of some of the dissidents in Russia in the 1990s, and it describes a lot of them as liberals. Now, I don't know if it's necessarily this kind of dissidence that we've seen, because we've seen people like Limonov and others who are much more towards a sort of reignition of a nationalist kind of sentiment. But there were a sort of element of the dissident sphere that were described in this particular article off the FPA as being seen as dishonest or inconsistent, effete bohemians who cheated 90% of the population and turned a blind eye to the corruption of privatization. Their calls for abstract rights were seen as a luxury by most Soviets, whose pressing needs were more often of a more basic survival, such as finding groceries or a place to live. The dissidents' penchant for such foreign exoticisms as democracy and human rights, consumption of foreign radio, and ties to Western rights organizations were seen as cryptic and unpatriotic. Moreover, the Jewish background of most dissidents did nothing to endear them to a population that generally viewed Jews with suspicion and prejudice. All in all, their links with the West, their bohemian lifestyles, their rejection of Soviet mores, and their Jewishness made dissidents seem suspicious outsiders of dubious loyalty, sort of the way the red states and Tea Partyers in the US feel about the liberal intelligentsia.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Омовение сделать Камчатку. Голову можно? Даже нужно. Не надо. Надо на себе попробовать. Не надо туда далеко. Все остальные будут оставлять здесь валюту. Я могу начать, понимаешь, что первый взнос сделать.
This is the Paratonka Hot Springs in Kamchatka.
Pause. Why? Was that a joke about foreign currency, or what? Like, why would they think people are going to travel over from the US to go here? They'll just go to like hot springs in America, won't they?
I do not know.
I assume that's a reference to that just being an extreme. There must be an extreme shortage of foreign currency at that. Governments try to keep foreign currency reserves. It helps them control the value of their own currency or stop it moving too quickly and stuff, right? So it's like an asset to have, especially dollars, but some other currencies as well. Like most governments around the world try and keep foreign currency reserves, and when they run out, it's a crisis. Although I think this was more a thing of the Bretton Woods era. We're sort of living in the post-Bretton Woods. But anyway, I assume that they had a foreign currency crisis at that moment. That's why they mentioned that. I assume it's a joke.
Well, I mean, it's the beginning of the start of resources being siphoned out of the Soviet Union into overseas banks. And then these new guys, the so-called seven bankers, are starting to create private banks within Russia to then draw the money back in from outside. So I suppose at some point there is something of a foreign currency or a liquidity shortage.
Are these guys here, the seven bankers on screen?
No, they're just. I think
there
this
are
is
seven of them.
It seems like Yeltsin did a sort of charm offensive in those early 90s years, 91, 92. There's, he went to hot springs in Kamchatka, and he also went to Kyrgyzstan, and there were some hot springs there as well. And I think he was just sort of having a good time, staying at the old sanatoriums and being kind of a chap of the people. There's interesting, funny stories about Yeltsin that come up when I was looking into him in this period. A bit later on in the mid-90s, there's a story about how he went to stay in Washington under the Clinton administration. And he was staying at a place called the Blair House, which was the government's guest quarters. And apparently one night, the Secret Service literally found him wandering around in his underpants on Pennsylvania Avenue, and he was trying to hail a cab because he wanted some pizza. True story.
Boris Yeltsin,
yeah.
So this is well into the drinking years.
He was, he was kind of sneaking around the basement of Blair House once. Apparently, the Secret Service nearly shot him as well. So he was a bit of a wild card, a bit of a free spirit.
I want to ask what it is about Russian leaders getting their tops off. I feel like we often see them without,
thing, isn't it?
without their. It's just more of a culture of like, I'm going to get my shirt off.
Yeah,
got to be rugged and blokey.
Yeah, rugged and blokey. Yeah, I mean,
do you think John Prescott would have ever been into this sort of thing?
Yeah.
Should
we get Farage to do a bit of bareback horse riding and see if it sort of helps his polling figures? If only he'd listen to our advice.
If only.
У хозяина спросить, поскольку вы купаетесь? 5 минут? Нет, оптимальный 12 минут. Потому что он один плавает. Остальные не выходят. Да, потому что кадры происходят.
Много сейчас говорят в Москве о том, что будут экономические реформы, что будет рынок и так далее. Как вы думаете, вы что-нибудь сделаете или уже?
Не знаю. Мы даже ужахаемся, боимся чего-то, вроде бы как бы хуже не было. Вот чего. Уж больно много безобразия это разве.
Just to put in perspective here, a lot of these kind of cutaways that Curtis does to the countryside where nothing much seems to be happening is kind of to make that exact point that there's always the kind of locus of power in Moscow where things are going on, where events are unfolding, and in this vast country, for most people, nothing changes. It just crawls along at a kind of subsistence level, which I feel is very much like Britain in the modern era.
In which there's too much ugliness around.
Correct.
Ведь убивают, грабят, лазят везде. Все прямо безобразие одно. Кругом одно пошло безобразие.
I'm just waiting for her to say, Simon, oh, not another one. Remember that?
She is that woman, yeah. I think they're bored potato pickers there.
Anything that involves picking stuff out of the ground, it's hard work, bent over all the time.
Yep. This will be Surrey in 2030.
It's like the end of Threads, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you see a lot of horse riders around here, though? Do you see a lot of horses and things?
That's an area.
Never kind of trotting free in that manner. Putin.
You don't see that.
Putin is watching this seething somewhere in the 90s. I'll have you in 20 years' time. Chechens. Yeah. I'll have you back.
Just saying, it's something else you don't see in British politics. People firing machine guns into the air. That might be a bit of a look, mightn't it?
Do you remember the? Anybody remember the Harry Enfield sketch? Doing
Arab celebrations.
Arab celebrations.
Fire guns in here.
Go on.
Just about this bit, they said they invaded the Soviet in
Chechnya.
Grozny. And like the Soviet, obviously, like in the pre-Bolshevik times, right? Soviets were workers' councils, right? I guess where they could meet and try and organize in some way. And then under the Soviet system, by the end, what had they become? They were no longer like genuine bottom-up sort of, representation committees.
So the idea is that the USSR was a collection of Soviets, right? So each region, of which the largest was Russia, the Russian Soviet, right?
Soviet Republic, right?
Yeah, and the Soviet was like the parliament of that place. And then each place had its representative in the Supreme Soviet, which was like a mega parliament where they'd all meet up.
Sorry, it's like a parliament, but obviously there's only one party, so it's like an inner party parliament. Is that right, or is it part of the state?
So in theory, they'd all be meeting up there to discuss the issues of the day. But in actuality, the issues of the day had already been decided by the Politburo.
Mm-hmm.
So they were basically there to rubber stamp decisions that had already been made.
And I guess each sort of like the guy who in fact works for the Politburo in each Soviet probably tries to catch the mood and, despite people not being really free to speak.
There were actually two Soviets. It's actually quite complicated, but one Soviet was made up of random workers, where it'd be like, you, Horace, you've done well on your grain quota this year. You are invited to come and represent your region in the People's Soviet or whatever it was called. And then the other one would be like the actual president of Chechnya, say, or the equivalent, like the actual leader of the Soviet would be invited along to go and, meet and talk in Moscow for a couple of weeks every year to basically rubber stamp whatever Stalin had decided.
Right.
But basically how it worked.
So I mean, at the very most, the only actual bottom-up power through the Soviets would just be they would be able to give some vibes back sometimes, but like they didn't decide anything. Everything was still basically run by the Politburo and the chief.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit like, I mean, one of the things that I found really remarkable when I looked into it was just how closely the EU seems to have the same structure. And
as if by design.
It's really, really quite interesting. And also, like, in theory, democracy is going on in the Supreme Soviet. Democracy is happening in these discussions.
In the EU Parliament, yeah.
But obviously all these things have already been, decided beforehand. So,
by the European Commission, yeah, you're right.
Exactly, and exactly. The European Commission or Andrea von der Leyen is basically Stalin,
Yeah. It's a bit different because the national leaders genuinely do matter in the EU. It's not democratic at all. It's like them lot who pre-agree things if they can, and the Commission leaders. And the EU Parliament.
They've got more slack, but don't they have controls where it's like the EU says your budget has to be within these constraints? Because I remember it was a controversy that Germany or France had to disobey the EU rules or something to get their budget through.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, France, like Germany allowed France to violate the rules. Yeah. That's right.
Marş udalo dünyada. Elsen tavuk.
It's like a shot from Father Ted.
I still find it mental that the Soviet Union still exists, even though Boris Yeltsin is now in power. I didn't actually know this, that there was this much overlap, that it continued to kind of limp on in this weird way.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
from about.
Yeah.
Well, sorry.
Go on.
It depends when you date Yeltsin being in power to, doesn't it? But there's an overlap of at least a year, isn't there? I think. The Soviet Union was dissolved in late 1991, I think.
So is Gorbachev, in theory, still in command of all of this?
He's still the president of the USSR.
Until late on, right? Yeah.
But Yeltsin is president of Russia, and he's declared the Communist Party illegal in Russia. So Gorbachev is kind of, the sort of dead man at the banquet. This is coming up to December 8th, 1991. We're about to go into the sort of end game.
Gorbachev's the most cucked man ever to exist.
He was furious.
Pathetic.
Yeah.
Well, no, he got to do the what was it? The Burger King advert or Pizza Hut? Was it?
The Pizza Hut.
Got to do that. But it's one of the most unusual, maybe unprecedented ends to a regime. I would say they're very sort of legalistic. But there's openly a power struggle, but it's conducted in in a way very respectful and legalistic terms. Although there was a coup attempt, obviously, some tanks, but it's sort of achieved legalistic. Like, we banned the Communist Party, and that what?
Aren't there bizarre examples? Was it Poland or Ukraine? I think it was Poland, who for like a period of like a year or 2 years had a government in exile, who like decamped to London. And they were still, like, in theory, running Poland until the commies took over and the Nazis took over. But they were still, like...
the
mid-war.
Yeah, in the 40s, during the war.
Yeah, loads of countries had that. It's just when the quote-unquote legitimate government goes into exile and still... It's like Taiwan, isn't it? They claim to be the legitimate government of China.
They are. As supposed, they are the legitimate government. They are. That is the Republic.
Horace nailing his colours to the mast there.
And I don't mean I support America intervening. I mean Taiwan standing alone against China and winning against.
I would just like to remind Chairman Xi, I am grateful for Thunder Tank toy, the Hammerhand toy from 1986, and Castle Grayskull, and many other great memories. I'm very grateful for China making all sorts of things. Carry on.
If I have this right, well, the Polish government, obviously, when Germany and then the Soviets invaded in 1939 and defeated Poland in, less than 2 months, I think. Poland did fight quite valiantly. But, I think the Polish government at that point fled to London en masse, and, were acknowledged and treated as the Polish government through most of the rest of the Second World War. And then there's this really sort of quite disgusting controversy about how Britain basically just kind of started dealing with the commies as the real government.
Yeah,
over 1945, I think. And it was quite pretty disgraceful. Yeah, it's all
Churchill de facto recognised. We did the same in Yugoslavia. For the entire war, our official position was that we supported the Yugoslav monarchy and the Chetiks who were fighting the Germans. Then, as the war ended, we just switched to the communists. just after years of support, we just went, no, that's it. We're just going to move. We're going to work with Stalin now.
And partly that was influenced by that. Was it Jack Klugman? He was like not one of the Cambridge Five, but he was another Soviet spy. He knew all the Cambridge Five. I think it was him. He was reporting back from. Well, I don't think he was out in Yugoslavia. Anyway, he strongly influenced the decisions in favour of Tito and stuff and the communists. Yeah, loads and loads of it was Churchill personally just making dreadful choices. But the Polish communists just started to be basically as the Red Army took over Poland. and the facts just kind of forced a new policy, Britain then started to treat. Well, they just started ignoring and disagreeing with the existing Polish government.
Well, I mean,
I'm not saying
there's still an Iranian government in exile, like a Shahist government in exile in America.
Theory, yeah. Where do they live in LA or something?
And they have like a little parliament, and they pass laws occasionally that they would like. It's quite weird.
I don't know if there's any remnant of the Byzantine Empire, but I'm up for potentially supporting that to reconstitute itself in Constantinopolis and then expand outwards, and especially all throughout Anatolia. Anyway, carry on.
Do you remember those Japanese guys who stayed loyal to the defeated imperialist, armies of World War II? They were still around in the 50s and things.
I think the Byzantine monarchy, like the Paleologan last dynasty, I think they still exist. But, people still say they could restore the Bourbons as well. I don't know what they call that. And there's there's the Otto van Habsburg. Is he still alive? Like people say, he should be restored to like the throne of Austria.
I think there were still Bonnie Prince Charlie loyalists.
Yeah, they seriously are.
Mm.
They seriously
bring back the Stuarts. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is
beautiful footage, by the way. Beautiful footage.
This is near the Polish border. This is the place called Viskuli, where there's a big hunting lodge where Yeltsin has gathered the president of Ukraine, Kravchuk, and Shushkevich from Belarus to sign the Białowieża Accords, which will break up the Soviet Union. The Baltic states have already kind of peeled away. Ukraine's already, I think, declared its sort of independence. And this is he's kind of rushing to do this sort of behind Gorbachev's back. It's potentially treasonous, but by the time things are underway, it's all a bit late for Gorbachev. He just has to kind of issue a statement saying naughty, naughty.
Could you just remind us what position these men hold at this point? What is Gorbachev's actual role? Is he the
president of the Soviet Union, which
he's the president of the Soviet Union.
has been neutralized as a kind of political entity in Russia? It still exists, but the independence movements, the momentum is for. I mean, there are some people gathering in what they call the ASSRs, which is a temporary thing, the autonomous Soviet Socialist Republics, and there are some who are appealing a way to become as fully independent as possible. Gorbachev was trying to push something called a union treaty to keep everybody in a kind of broad alignment, and Yeltsin basically took the view that no, the Soviet Union's doomed. Let's just accelerate and get to the next stage. And of course, Gorbachev, having tried to bring in liberalizing reforms, is being kind of bypassed by history somewhat, and is furious about the whole thing.
I think Gorbachev wasn't he also still the general secretary of the Central Committee of the Communist Party as well? I think if so, I think he was that until the end. But obviously, that's another reason for Yeltsin to rip the heart out of that. To ban the Communist Party in Russia. That means Gorbachev has no power from that angle in Russia either. So it's another way of gutting him for Yeltsin.
I still think that whether he intends it or not, whether Kurto intended this or not, I think it's impossible not to watch all of this and not think, in the background somewhere, in the bowels of the old KGB, a young Vladimir Putin is seething at every single thing happening here. Because if you look at every move Putin makes, it's to undo all of this bullshit and put the band back together, isn't it?
He's quoted as saying, the collapse of the Soviet Union is the greatest geopolitical catastrophe of the 20th century. And obviously his problem is at the moment, as we know, that he thinks Ukraine has taken former historic bits of Russia in the process of that collapse. He says modern Ukraine is entirely the product of the Soviet era. We know and remember well that it was shaped for a significant part on the lands of historical Russia. It's crystal clear that Russia was effectively robbed.
I put out the video on Major General Richard Hilton and Imperial Obituary, so I went back on Churchill and Macmillan and Eden and the Tory treachery of, but it's difficult not to watch this and see an exact parallel that Yeltsin is basically kind of a kind of Russian version of them, and not only in terms of who he's working with and for and the interests that he represents, but also from the Russian imperial point of view, the fact that he's just giving away all these territories in exactly the same way that the Winds of Change did in 1960. So kind of very interesting in that respect. Only, of course, in Russia, there is a man like Putin waiting there, You see, this is where I don't really know where I stand on questions of nationalism and empire and all of that, because on the one hand, you could say, well, why shouldn't Belarus be free? Why shouldn't Chechnya be free and all of that? On the other hand, who are you to deny the Russian Empire? And I just don't know. I don't really know who's in the right and who's in the wrong. But this is a matter of fact. It's like, well, what's the point of these countries? Russia's right there. They're always going to bully you in a way. So I don't want to get back into all those debates over Ukraine, but this is why I can never support nationalism in the abstract, because it's like, well, I'm not sure if I believe in like Belarusian nationalism. What does it even mean? And it only took less than 20 years for Belarus to be back under the Russian thumb, basically. So now a vassal state of Putin's.
Would you say that? Oh, yeah. Have you read The Grand Chessboard? Notorious ZBIG.
But what's his name?
Brzezinski.
Yeah. I have looked through it. I haven't read it cover to cover, but I'm quite aware of the book. He talks about playing the chess game with only one player or something, doesn't he? Is that the right book? Go on, Horace.
Can't remember that. Well, he's obviously of Polish descent, like upper class Polish descent, apparently. But obviously, I think moved to America when he's he had a Polish accent though, but was considered an American, right? Anyway, the Grand Chessboard one of the main things I took from it is that even back when he wrote that, which was mid to late 90s, it was just saying that Ukraine is pivotal on a global scale. Who controls Ukraine? He doesn't mean simply America versus Russia. He means he would say. I think he actually genuinely believed he was like a mixture of realist and liberal institutionalist in terms of geopol schools. He's genuinely both those things, and he argues, and I think sincerely, that sort of EU or liberal democratic institutions should control the whole of the Eurasian landmass eventually. I think he's saying, but he means definitely Europe, and no less of Europe than at the time of writing it. And he basically says it should include Ukraine, and it's going to need to be Russia as well. And he sort of seems to be anticipating Putin. This was a bit before Putin had come to power, but he's basically saying back then, less aggressively, less and more honestly as well. But what the Newlands and stuff said later, which not in so many words, but was like basically Putin's got to go because we need a sort of broken up, compliant Western aligned Russia that does things our way. And from that perspective, I suppose you can see why. I don't even know if you'd call it imperialist, but there's this I don't know, certain in Russia, even maybe not among nationalists, there's still a desire to decide what happens in Ukraine, because it is otherwise, if it's not Russia, it's going to be the US, NATO, the EU, Brzezinski, Newland, whoever, right? It's going to be their lot, and it's going to be hostile to Russia. I kind of sympathise with both. I mean, I don't really sympathise at all with the neocon or pro-intervention view, but it's not like I want Ukraine to be controlled by Russia. I don't know, it's coming, but you can see why there's this just enduring dispute over it. It is important to the whole world, it seems, especially Russia and the US. global geopolitics. A lot seems to hinge on Ukraine, amazingly. Yeah.
We seem to have a Russian nationalist in the chat, which is fun. Always fun.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure I piss off both sides. The other thing to mention is that it's Brzezinski who I think he starts his book by recalling Halford Mackinder's theories about, the
heartland, the island nations versus the heartland.
Yeah, who controls the hinge points of the Eurasian landmass, like the world island, right? Seems to control the world, seems to be more hegemonic.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know whether I agree, but it's quite interesting to read about. He was writing in sort of the first few years of the 20th century, and I think it was actually sort of maybe a lefty liberal. I'm not sure. He was part of the.
I kind of want, just for fun, just to see what will happen. The Russians to stay allied with the Chinese, to stay allied with the Iranians, to bring Turkey on board, to form the juggernaut and do it. Just to see how things will go for a while. To see if nothing else, it'd be interesting to see if Mackinder's right, because the island nations have had a pretty long innings, and frankly, Europe has been absolutely fucked over by it. At this point, it hasn't really done Europe, like, it's getting demographically replaced. It's it's spiritually bankrupted. It's led by liars. It hasn't exactly gone well, really, if you think about it in the very long run. So I kind of think it wouldn't be a tragedy to let them have the run of the green for a while, because
to let Mackinder's theory have its day, sort of thing.
Mackinder obviously was on the side of trying to keep the Russians in check, but just see what happens if the other side wins for a while, and it might actually kind of, I'd love to have a British Prime Minister who didn't give a fuck about Ukraine, for example.
Yeah.
Right. But at the moment, they're still thinking in like Mackinder terms, as if they've involved in running the empire or something. And in a way, Britain needs to have a bit of a timeout, and maybe just that faction of Russia, China, just having being the check on the US for a while will actually help Britain just not have to be so involved in everything for a while. That's what I'd like to see.
An interesting aside about Mackinder as well is that if I have this right, I'm just trying to check. I think, Mackinder was the second ever director of the London School of Economics, and also a member of the Coefficients Dining Club. I think those two things make him a Fabian. So we're talking about Fabian, left imperialist geopolitics sort of stuff. It's because obviously Keir Starmer was head of the Fabian Society, and so there's long continuity of these things. Going through the Foreign Office as well, probably going through Arnold Toynbee even.
Yeah. He's got some interesting things to say about democracy, Mackinder. He's look, it's got a whole book on it, or it's a section of his famous Heartland thesis book, because I've got it here somewhere, where he says look, if you're serious about, realistically fighting the world game, geopolitics and all that, you're going to have to throw out these some of these liberal democratic assumptions, because parts of the world don't give a fuck about this, and the more we care about it, the more we're going to, it's not necessarily going to go the way you want. So he is pretty realist in some ways, but I think the Mackinder thesis is still basically holds. Still seems to be in the thinking of the neocons and the British government, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. Brzezinski cited it as just current, even though he was writing 90 years later. Yeah.
Well, the world hasn't changed. The geography of the world has not changed. So
the importance of Ukraine.
I mean, speaking of the importance of Ukraine, I think we're facing a global food shortage at the moment, because it's the breadbasket of Europe, or the breadbasket of Russia, whichever whichever way you want to look at it. And I believe, in last I checked in on the war, the Russians have, like, they did something to really piss off the Russians about a month or so ago. And Putin said, like, my red line is, if you attack a single Russian civilian on Russian soil, all bets are off. And I think they've started blockading, like, they're stopping grain going out, which is going to lead to, like, mass starvation if it holds up.
Oh, this I think this one of the main port. Like, I mean, there's something to do with Constantia in Romania. Who controls what ports in the Crimea? Sorry, in the Black Sea has changed. Yeah, has changed recently, and then they're like retaliatorily. I think like Ukraine's exports of food through the seaports, at least, is being.
This is going to be one of the most callous things I've said in the history of the channel. And I don't say it. I say it partly with my tongue in my cheek, but also in the spirit of very dark humor. In a strange way, Vlad could do a massive solid to Europe, couldn't he? Because the first people to starve would be huge numbers of the third world would be the first person to die. And if they're dead, they can't come here. So in a strange way, Putin, just like he cured COVID, could also he could resolve the immigration question just by killing everybody. So, and I'm only half joking. There is a kind of truth to that.
If you're listening, Vlad.
Yeah.
You know what would happen, though, wouldn't you?
My old friend.
Well, they just make another refugee crisis. Oh, all the Nigerians are starving. We got to come to
Oh God.
That's what
could possibly
that is what would happen. They do the same as with climate migration. Yeah, just use it as another pretext.
What? It's really hot in Europe, so you must come from Africa now.
Whatever they need, yeah, just say anything.
We still did the weather out for you.
I mean, just in case any of you are listening, I'm not actually advocating for like mass genocide through blockading Ukraine. Just saying it could be like a kind of, side consequence of Russia's actions. Could like have knock-on thinking beyond stage one, to use Sowell's, because this is essentially a problem that the world's having. There's excess population in the global south. There's just too many people, and they're leaving and flooding into Europe. Where are all these people coming from? Who were all those people who turned up in Spain the other day? Like 60,000 people from Morocco to Spain. Did anybody see that? I mean, where they all come in? They're all coming from Africa. So, if there were fewer Africans, they wouldn't be able to come here. The invention of refrigeration was a disaster for the human race.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, probably.
Well, or penicillin. All these great advances. But all it means is that billions of people don't die now.
Yeah, it's very true. But there you are. What can you do?
The classical liberal Herbert Spencer made this argument. I remember he argued that you should not provide public sanitation because the working class will breed like rats, and therefore there'll be too many people. So
I mean, I do wonder if we just stopped interfering in Africa altogether, like we actually just pulled all economy, all resources, everything out of Africa, what would happen? Basically, I mean, some of them would probably do all right, others not so well. Just return it to dark Africa. No, we genuinely don't know what's going on there.
This is one of the strangest things about Tony Blair, by the way, which is that he goes into African countries and he says, how would you like to have a world-class internet infrastructure? And you look at these countries and they're still like carrying water from wells and things. Like these people don't have like running water, and you're trying to like sell them Microsoft. It's weird, but this goes on anyway.
Well, actually, the thing is, a lot of the time that works because you'd be amazed how many intermediate steps you don't need.
What skip the first three industrial revolutions, go straight to the fourth one?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it's not like a good long-term strategy, but it does work. If you like, I mean, when I was walking through some slums in Nairobi recently, people living in tin shacks, and there'd be an internet cafe or a booth that sold iPhones, right?
Yeah, we don't have running water, but we've got like the latest 5G,
Yep.
fastest broadband going. Thanks, Tony.
People want that more than they want running water. Actually, I think they want the slop and the entertainment.
Mm.
It's one of those weird things. Like in my brief travels in Africa, it like you literally see somebody like old fashioned, like literally carrying the water on their head, and then you go into the town and there's a KFC there.
Yep,
it's just strange. It's just weird.
Was there a Pizza Hut?
I'm sure there was.
Was Gorbachev advertising it?
There's parts of Asia that are like this, parts of South America where, like, people aren't thinking, "Oh, I wish I had running water." To them, that's just normal. Like having to go and get water from the town tap that might have cholera in it. That's fine, But they still want the modern comforts. They want the KFC and the cars and the iPhones.
Maslow's hierarchy of fast food outlets and mobile phone packages.
Yep.
I remember I went to Laos once. I got a coach from one part of Laos to the other, and it's quite common. Like plenty of people had proper houses, but quite a lot also just lived in like iron shacks, like corrugated iron or whatever, not really sealed up or anything, But it takes them from torrential rain because the rain there just falls straight down, so it's all right. But some of them still had like a satellite dish on the outside of the iron shack. I'm not kidding.
Oh, this is the other weird thing. Like these people, like living in the bush, but you're a Real Madrid fan. What the fuck?
Yeah.
I mean,
you got a real Real Madrid shirt as well. It costs like 60, 70 quid.
Just what? How?
We had people approaching us on the sides of roads, and they were burning plastic, and they would come up and go, "Arsenal or Manchester? We're Arsenal, Manchester. Which one? Arsenal, Manchester." Like it was live or die.
Bizarre.
Like people do, like people of all kinds watch the Premiership all over the world. You walk part of the year, just go through like some tiny village in the distance, like the other side of the world, is people sit there watching Liverpool, Chelsea.
About 20 years ago, there was a documentary about a Chinese guy who saved up 3 years of salary to get a train with a train all the way from China to Britain by railway, just to go and watch Manchester United play. 3 years of just because he was that obsessed with them.
Mental. It's just mental. And there'll be somebody watching this, no doubt, thinking, "Oh, there it is, our British soft power. Soft power. What do you want it for? What for? What if like why do you want that? I mean, I just don't get it." Anyway. I remember somebody making that argument about Benny Hill, or was it like Norman Wisdom? Like Norman Wisdom is absolutely massive in like the Eastern Bloc. Like somehow
Albania,
the BBC sold Norman Wisdom to Eastern Europe. So there are some like really weird things like that. I think Mr. Bean is kind of like worldwide famous in that way, like sold into every different market. Also, Neil Buchanan's Art Attack was in like 140 countries.
Art Attack.
Yeah, Art Attack.
Brilliant.
And each country had its own Art Attack. So there's like a shit Argentinian one and like a shit Brazilian one, and it's exactly the same. It's like the red shirt and Mr. Head.
So he's loaded. Then he sold that for
Neil Buchanan is really very rich. Yeah, although he didn't he sold the rights to replicate, like he franchised out Art Attack all around the world. Mental. But.
What was Mr. Bean? Mr. Bean, apparently, because he doesn't talk, that helps it just be watched anywhere.
Yeah, that's why it was Norman. It was Norman Wisdom, Benny Hill, and Mr. Bean. Those are three massive, because they was kind of slapstick comedy. And I actually watched some Benny Hill when I was on holiday. It just came like I stuck on the TV in the hotel, and Benny Hill was on, and It's kind of quite funny. It's kind of quite funny, but also like weirdly pervy as well. Speaking of the 70s, but very, very silly, very silly. Yeah. But there was one Benny Hill thing I watched where they have a game of football, and like the goalkeeper is like a model, and he can't stop like kind of posing. And then there's one guy having a fag, and it's actually quite fun. Actually, it's quite fun. And then some nurses come on the pitch, and obviously you know what happens next. So. So were Benny Hill and Norman Wisdom both absolutely loaded due to their being sold around the world, or did the BBC keep all the money? Anybody
I don't know. I don't know. I don't think Benny Hill was necessarily particularly well off when he died. Slumped in front of the telly in his flat. Quite sad.
Thames Television apparently makes the money off Benny Hill. So
there you go. TV people.
That was true. Remember, I looked into all the Carry On films. I remember like looking into the finances and stuff, and they were being paid almost nothing. Those actors, they just stayed loyal, but the producer kept all the money basically. So he was minted, and like they were still paying like Kenneth Williams like a flat fee in like the 70s and stuff, even though he was a big star. So it's kind of interesting.
TV people are horrible. They're so nasty, really. If you ever get the opportunity to work with TV people, they'll always tell you there's no money for whatever they're asking you to do.
Simon, you mentioned Thames Television on the stream last night.
Yeah. One of the old ITV type franchises that were done away with in 1982.
Yeah, because Granada was that Lord Bernstein?
Sid Bernstein, from Manchester, yeah.
So do we know who was behind Thames Television? Were they nasty people?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Chaffing, like they're creaming. They're still even now creaming off that sweet Benny Hill money. It just seems like sleazy.
Probably especially from Germany. He's very popular in Germany, apparently, still.
That's sort of how, what's his name? Steve Bannon. Talking of classy people, Steve Bannon sort of mainly, he might have been rich anyway. He was already he was already fairly senior at Goldman Sachs or something, wasn't he? But he bought a slice of the rights to Seinfeld, what's it called? Like syndication rights to Seinfeld. Which is he even now maybe still owns that. Yeah, like he's got a slice of that. And that's just huge money. Yeah, because like that made, when Seinfeld sold the rights to that, so he no longer gets that, but he sold that for something like, and I'm not joking, like $700 million or something.
Yeah.
And then obviously that's for the buyers to think it was worth that much. They must be making billions over time out of it. I guess Seinfeld's still sold for still being shown now and syndicated. But yeah, Bannon gets a bit of that. He's in on that. He's got a mill on that river,
Wow. So someone in the chat is saying Tommy Cooper is better than Benny Hill. I have to admit this, right? I never understood Tommy Cooper or what was funny, or can anybody explain that? I just didn't. You just did magic tricks poorly. What was the joke there? I didn't.
I think that was it. Yeah.
No, there was
he's much admired as a.
Because he the whole thing is he's good at the magic tricks actually, and I think you either have to get the persona or not. Like his stage persona is just quite funny to me. As he comes off like a sort of drunk uncle who knows he's a bit shit. That's sort of why it works.
I don't know. There was that other what was this Ken Goodwin or whatever, one of those 70s comedians.
Ken Dodd.
No, Ken Goodwin.
Oh,
that kind of guy who's just like not funny. Like his whole thing is that he just tells shit jokes and laughs at them himself, and the people are just cracking up. And I'm like, what? I just don't get. I mean, Maybe if you guys ever want to, if I want to pull your channel down into the muck, I'll make you watch 70s comedians. You can explain.
No, let's do that. That'd be a great stream. That would be a brilliant stream that we need to do.
I've actually got a vinyl I picked up in the charity shop of the best bits of the comedians, which was issued at the time for you, AA, to hang on your wall.
Oh, amazing!
Yeah,
amazing. Yeah. If you don't know what I'm talking about, by the way, some of the older people in the chat may remember this character here, Ken Goodwin. Just not funny in any single respect, and yet people are just lapping it up, like literally falling on the floor laughing.
I tell you who you'd really like Max Wall, like a proto Stuart Lee, like Stuart Lee if he'd done music hall as a kid.
Max Hall, all right.
Max Wall. Really good. He's really dark, like actually quite depressing routine, but it's very good.
Okay. Talking of like totally unfunny, that's why I always thought of Michael Barrymore. I could never understand. There was like people getting hysterics of laughter watching Barrymore doing like some silly little dance or something. And I was like, what? Why? When he sort of disgraced himself, it seemed like a relief. It was like, right, no more Barrymore on TV, please. Thanks.
Well, one thing I will say about those 70s comedians, the ones who made it and went on to have like careers like Roy Walker on Catchphrase or Jim Bowen on Bullseye, I would say that the TV men kind of got it. Like they did end up selecting the best of them to be the presenters of the game shows then, because they were the funniest ones. I couldn't help but notice that the most talented ones are the ones who did survive into the next era. So.
And they probably saw the future coming with alternative comedy, which was going to rip away their world anyway.
Yeah,
Les Dawson was pretty much on TV until he died, wasn't he? I think because
he was actually funny. Right? Les Dennis got his start. Speaking of because he did Family Fortunes, Les Dennis got his start on that sort of circuit as well. And his whole thing was like, believe it or not, doing impressions. Like he was like he was an impressions guy. Yeah. And one of the things that's slightly tragic about Les Dennis is that obviously
one of many things
apart from being the doppelganger of Keith Chegwin. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, well, Les Dennis obviously like made his name in like 1979, 1980 sort of time. He was a comedian. But then he was like still doing Family Fortunes in like the late 90s and things like that. But obviously he hadn't updated any of his acts or any of his so all of the impressions he did were still like he was still doing like James Callahan and kind of he did a mean Scylla. I think he did a Scylla Black, didn't he?
And didn't he do Mavis from Coronation Street?
Yeah, So I actually got into because this has been like a bit of a kind of side interest of mine, and as well as my brother who has the same kind of dark humor as I do. So at one point we got into watching like the latest era Les Dennis Family Fortunes we could find, and then trying to date back. Like he'd still do like a little bit on Family Fortunes, where the bit where he's talking to the guests and so on, and he'd do a little joke and stuff. And like you say, or still doing Mavis, still like, getting his Margaret Thatcher out. Like she hadn't been the Prime Minister for a decade, and he's still like busting out the classics,
Oh, sorry, Simon, you mentioned he's the doppelganger of Keith Chegwin. I don't know if anybody wants to see Les Dennis and Keith Chegwin together. I can't remember what it's called. It was something. There was a 15-minute spin-off from Life's Too Short. The Gervais Merchant written thing, but with what's his name, Warwick Davis. And Warwick Davis manages Cheggers. Who we're talking about, Family Fortunes guy, Les Dennis, and another. I'll leave that as a surprise for when you watch it, as a little act of doing just their old shit. It's funny. It was on YouTube, but it's called like the early years. No, it's something else. But it was a spin-off from Life's Too Short, like a 15-minute special. It'll be on the internet. I recommend it to everyone. It's really funny. It's got Cheggers and Les Dennis together.
one of the things I'd like to do as well, and this is something again me and my brother did, was going on YouTube and trying to find like if any of these old comedians ever did like a kind of a corporate gig, but way after they were famous, or like was there a little period where Les Dennis was bitter, like in between losing his Family Fortunes gig and like doing the stuff with Ricky Gervais? Was there like a little period there where he went back on the circuit or something like that? Just finding them like when they're not, they're kind of past
when they're at their
peak.
lowest ebb.
Yeah, or like when we were watching Jim Davidson's YouTube channel the other week, type thing. And I'm
It's lucky they didn't have the internet, isn't it?
I'm really interested in those sorts of things. Like watching like a charity do that's done, by whoever it was. Yeah. Yeah.
Simon gets like this after a few.
Totally.
Rather than slop, we should just all get together and do this in a basement.
Want to see Dick Dellingpole there?
Yeah. Did look like Dellingpole, didn't he? Brother Dick Dellingpole. Yeah.
He's probably got that outfit.
This all happens quite quickly, this collapse. It's between about the 8th and the 24th of December in 91. And really what's going on is Gorbachev now knows what's going on. He's not happy. He's trying to call for a referendum to decide whether people want to stay together. But, meanwhile, all the other presidents are getting their parliaments to ratify the decision to leave the Soviet Union. And by about the 16th of December, I think Kazakhstan officially declares independence, and it's kind of more or less all over, and it's just negotiating after that.
Just looking at, I just wanted to see if Les Dennis is still with us, and he's 72, still alive, right?
Witnessing one of the greatest tragedies of geopolitics in the 20th century.
What I love here is he presented Family Fortunes from 1987 to 2002.
Yeah.
And then it's got Amanda Holden, divorce 2003. It's just, his entire world fell to pieces in 2002, the horrible little period for him there. And then how long was it until he did the extras thing with Ricky Gervais? 2005. So that was only like 3 years later, but yeah. I wonder what he's doing now. Panto. Coronation Street.
There you go.
All right, okay.
I mean, that's probably quite a well-paid gig, right? That's probably very easy work, One take.
Yeah, he did Coronation Street from 2014 to 2020. That's pretty good work for Dennis.
It feels like a familiar cycle in the British entertainment industry that it waits until you're absolutely at your lowest ebb, totally crushed, and then you get a little bit of a revival at the end of your life, and they stick you in a fairly safe job, and then you pop your clogs and they call you a national treasure after having ruined your life.
And I didn't know this, that Amanda Holden had an affair with Neil Morrissey of Men Behaving Badly fame. So
you don't remember that? That was the slop talk for weeks back in 2002 or whatever.
I missed that cycle that it was Neil Morrissey. He made a lot of money with Bob the Builder, didn't he? He was the voice of Bob the Builder. Yeah. All right, let's get back to.
That did make him loads of money. I think, yeah, it really did.
Yeah, I think it was like his most lucrative thing ever was being Bob the Builder.
That made him.
They had a number one single and everything. So anyway,
I've just sorry, AA. I've just been told. Rest in peace, Tim Curry.
Oh right, okay, that's
another one.
Frankenfurter from the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
And many other beloved roles. That is sad.
My mind goes to he was the devil in Legend, wasn't he?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And wasn't he the butler in Clue?
Did he?
Can we think of any lower grade cultural product for him than that?
He was good. Everyone liked him.
He was in Command and Conquer as the communists. We must go to the one place that hasn't been crushed by capitalism. Space.
Sorry,
that one.
Do you mean Red Alert?
Sorry, Red Alert, not Command and Conquer. Mixed them up.
Or Red Alert 2, maybe, yeah.
But he was 80 as well. Good God.
Didn't he play the clown in it?
Yeah, that's right.
That's
Pennywise.
Tim Curry,
Yes.
you know? It's good. He had a great look for a villain, Tim Curry. Just kind of looked a bit like, just looked a bit like the devil himself, you know.
Yeah, didn't need that much makeup. Yeah.
Simon, I kind of like the vibe of talking about Les Dennis as we watch the Soviet Union collapse. I feel like it's something that only we could create, you know?
Yeah, yeah. It feels like one is a kind of synecdoche for the other. Sort of shabby glory of the collapse of his career. Probably applies to Gorbachev here as well. Cold as ice.
Did you know that Les Dennis had a comedy partner? And he was actually part of a double act who he kind of betrayed to go solo. So there's like a kind of there's like an Andrew Ridgeley character who was like Les Dennis's lesser known double act who got left in the lurch.
You don't mean Diane Abbott's cousin, do you?
Ross Abbott. No, it wasn't Ross Abbott. It was
they had a show together.
I can't even remember. His name was Dustin G. Dustin G. Right? And I mean, if you don't believe me, they were literally a double act. It was like Dennis and G or something. There you go. Look, there they were in there, and he basically dumped G to go on to fame and fortune, as you know. So
the Chuckle Brothers. It looks like them, doesn't it?
Yeah. If you want to see Dennis in Corrie, there he is. Ian beeling it up. There he is. Look, kind of fitting in a way, isn't it? So, all right. Oh, apparently the partner died. That G guy died. So,
if you want a brief, obscure, quite dark little video featuring Davro, Chegwin, and Jim Bowen, I put it in the private chat there. People in the chat probably have seen it before. It's a bit of missing footage. I don't know if Simon's seen this.
No, I don't know.
Davro.
Yep.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Who do you guys prefer, Davro or Davros?
Davro. I think Davros. Davro was a phenomenon when I was in Australia, so I don't really know what he's about at all.
He nearly turned into Davros in that video. It's quite harrowing.
That Davro used to stay across the street from me when he used to come and play the Pavilion. So I used to see Bobby Davro on the regular when I was a kid. And he was strangely kind of weirdly bitter, as they all are. So, yeah. So, we'll have a look at that before we wrap
go.
You see what I sent in the chat? Like, if anybody wants to watch it later, it's the Life 2 special thing with Cheggers and Les Dennis.
Yeah, well, I'll give that a watch.
Yeah, it's like 25 minutes, so you can't watch it on the show, but.
That's incredible. That's an amazing bit of footage.
I think Putin does it better, though, because he gets bigger doors.
And he has the guys in the Napoleonic outfits that sort of step.
And he doesn't look like he's wobbling at the top of the stairs.
And the white.
Yeah, because he's not pissed. Yeah.
Oh, this is sad. This is sad. Gorby was crying.
Oh. It's like the end of Oliver Stone's Nixon, isn't it?
Yeah. So around the 17th of December, he accepts that it's all finished, and he agrees to step down by the end of the month. End of the month, around the 22nd, 24th, they just have a meeting at the Kremlin to work out what to do with the Soviet archives, because that's where all the sort of bodies are buried in a sense. And they hand over the nuclear codes to Yeltsin, and he gets all of Gorbachev's, perquisites, let's say, and Gorbachev gets some security and a pension.
Can you imagine the darkness of that moment of Gorbachev looking into his water, thinking in a couple of years' time I'm going to be doing Pizza Hut adverts. I was the man who brought down the Soviet Union. Fuck.
But according to some, that's what he wanted. That was his goal.
He tried to bring liberalism in, liberal reforms in.
But then after his dark night of the soul that lasted a couple of years, he then saw the size of the check that he was going to get from Pizza Hut, and everything seemed a bit more rosy. Because I bet that is fucking good money, like Pizza Hut adverts. Like you get maybe millions for that.
So
this beautiful shot. This.
Did Gorbachev ever do Wogan? I know it sounds ridiculous, but
he did do a kind of interview circuit in his
post. He might
have done Buckley.
Wogan did do like big stars as well, right? I remember Madonna being on it.
Or would that have been David? That would have been David Frost job back in the day, wouldn't it? Rather than
Wogan did big stars as well, like big. Oh yeah, not political. Maybe
he went and founded something called the Gorbachev Foundation, which was a kind of global environmental non-NGO type of thing.
Can this image on screen? Can I get a print of that? I fancy putting that on my wall. That's
nice.
I like, there's people who are big into like brutalism and stuff. Brutalist buildings. They actually like brutalist buildings. I reckon they should like stuff like this as well, just like the hideousness of industry or whatever.
Heavy Soviet metal.
Yeah.
I'm having a look, by the way, and he was interviewed by Jon Snow. Remember Jon Snow? I've got a thing of Jon Snow somewhere here. Where is he?
I've never seen so many white people in one place. It's an extraordinary story.
Great journalism. Apparently he was on Clive Anderson, according to the chat.
Who, Gorbachev?
Yeah, someone says here, Alphabet.
I have a feeling, yeah, that's right. That seems
just before the Bee Gees, wasn't it?
Clive the Bastard Anderson.
What happened to Clive? You don't see him anymore. Clive Anderson.
No one liked him. He's just. I've never known anyone who liked Clive Anderson.
Everyone just realised they didn't like him, so they stopped watching.
He did Whose Line Is It Anyway, didn't he? He was like the first host of that.
Yeah.
He was like a lawyer or something, wasn't he? Just somehow being a TV presenter.
Yeah.
When he pissed off the Bee Gees, that was the same episode.
Yeah, that's right.
What, the same episode?
No, I'm joking.
Right.
That would have been a hell of an episode.
Gorbachev was on next. He had to come on early. He had to stretch.
So that's pretty much it. 25th of December 1991, about 7:30, they take down the hammer and sickle flag.
Well, that was a sad day at the BBC.
It looks like crap machinery, doesn't it?
Well, it's quite fun. I'd like to drive that.
It's like something out of Stalker, really. It's kind of brutal.
It's like movie music, isn't it?
That's Lawrence English, who does the soundtrack, which you can find actually on YouTube.
Well, he created that for this.
Yes.
I'm now interested to know if any of the English language interviews he did, Gorbachev, whether it was Jon Snow or Clive Anderson or whoever else, did anyone bring up the Pizza Hut?
Must have done.
I think the Pizza Hut was a few years after, right?
Yeah, that was later. That was 2000s Pizza Hut.
Look at this. What the fuck?
I think Gorbachev maintained that he tried to save the Soviet Union, didn't he?
Yeah.
Even afterwards.
He did.
Yeah.
But no one's. But to this day, there's no agreement as to what exactly his plan was, or if he even had a plan. Like that's still very much hotly debated.
Perestroika and Glasnost, wasn't it?
Yeah. He was trying to hold
it's not-
together as it was spinning apart. It wasn't going to happen.
Yeah. He was. What was it he was actually trying to achieve?
Yeltsin got in there. He cut off the supply of money to the Central Soviet government agencies, and he phoned George W. Bush, H.W. Bush, and said, "That's it, we're on."
I feel like if the Soviet Union was going to be saved, really it had to happen immediately after Brezhnev, that kind of era, like Andropov sort of time. I feel like that was probably the time that they really had to steer the ship around, like pre-Gorbachev, to be honest. It's probably too late by the time Gorbachev came there.
And another important thing to remember is a bit like we are in this retrospective mode today. Guardian was reporting back in 2006, saying a large majority of Russians in opinion surveys regretted the end of the Soviet Union, not so much for the loss of communism, but because they lost a secure way of life.
Yeah, stands to reason, I suppose.
People say similar in other Eastern Bloc countries. I think like East Germany says, we're not saying like everything was perfect by any means, but there were a lot of guarantees, a lot of safety nets.
Yeah,
and there were a lot of people who, whether you want to explain it away or not, in Russia, most of them are dead now, of course, but they did, while they were alive, said back in Stalin's day things were better. Lots of them said that as well. Lots of them had fond memories of Stalin.
Good manager.
Good, yeah. He was tough. Say what you want about Stalin, he was tough, but he did make the trains run on time. So
firm hand on the tiller.
Would he have been the Mourinho of the Soviet Union, or the someone else? The Alex Ferguson of the Soviet Union? Who's the one who threw the shoe at Beckham?
Ferguson, yeah.
Right.
I've actually got a video forthcoming on Stalin's management techniques. I'm not even joking. His organizational flair, and actually how, if you abstract it, Tony Blair made many of the same moves that Stalin did. Like, for example, declaring himself the center of left and right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, these are kind of things that people in power do. Stalin just makes it more visible and crude, but Blair did many of the same things, really.
He's like a conceptual artist, Tony Blair, in that way, isn't he?
Kind of, the neoliberal Stalinist. I don't think there are any more super chats, unless I'm mistaken. Has anybody? I think we're kind of done, and we can watch that little video you sent me, Hat.
Was that episode 4 of Trauma Zone?
That was episode 3. We are moving on to episode 4. There's 7
snailing through.
But
there's 3 more or 4 more?
There's 7 episodes in total. We've just ended number 3, so number 4 next time.
So that's about 90s Russia.
Yes. As we get into the kind of lead up to Putin, and it ends when Putin takes power in 1999. That's where we go.
It's about the Yeltsin years.
Yeah.
Which were under-examined, to be fair. There's not many documentaries about the Yeltsin years. He's not like it's not someone who's on like the History Channel, like a biopic of Yeltsin. It doesn't happen much.
Before we go on. Yeah. I was just going to say, before we move on, I want to get a plug in before the end of the show. This is for a friend of mine sent me the text of a new book by Wilfings, Chort Hydroponics, which is some writings by, Soviet, if you like, you might say dissidents in some way, but anti-communists certainly. And it's out now on Wilfings. Go to the website and have a look at that. It's 3 writers, Evgeny Golovin, Pavel Boborykin, and Maxim Valetsky. And these are quite interesting essays. There's one little passage called, I'd like to just read out from Maxim Valetsky, a subject, people and power, 2 short paragraphs. the politician's real goal, and this is sort of salient to the conversation we had earlier. Yes, we have already mentioned multiple times that politicians have an alien soul structure, but we still have to explain their goal. Yes, they are super active, super risk-taking, and constantly strive to grow their influence. That is their nature. But what about their goal? The answer is fairly trivial. It was already given to us by Orwell in 1984. The goal of power is power. Everywhere and always. This must be sternly remembered and never forgotten. The tragedy is that private persons do not want to believe that there are no exceptions. Yes, everyone strives for power, but there should appear at least someone who will fight for power, not for himself, but for our sake. And in this hope lies the main confusion. The people do not understand that even those who sincerely want to give the people freedom, well-being, spirituality, and all such things, i.e., those who are actually honest and just, that for them too, power's goal is also power. So I recommend going and having a look for that book, Chort Hydroponics, on the Wilfing site now.
Sounds interesting. Also, if you watch my Major General Richard Hilton video earlier, you can get his books on that
on the
site
same
as well.
site.
Yeah. That guy on the left, is that Leo Sayer? He was on TV all the time in the 90s. Leo Sayer.
Leo Sayer? What, the singer, Leo Sayer?
Yeah, on the left there.
That's never Leo Sayer.
No, Lionel Blair.
Lionel Blair.
Lionel
Yeah.
Blair. Lionel Blair. I always get those two confused. Lionel Blair. He I feel like he occupied a niche on TV.
He was a beloved face. Yeah.
I kind of never really liked him. And then in a similar mold, I feel like Giles Brandreth is also a figure who's always on fucking TV all the time. Who like these people? Who like Lionel Blair?
I would say I liked Lionel Blair, but I remember him from the days when he would pop up on things like the Kenny Everett video show. But that was like the late 70s, early 80s. He would be he'd come on and do a bit of a camp face and a funny line, and he was actually good at doing that. But then he became a kind of fixture for doing that for the rest of his career.
He was still doing it in like the mid 90s.
Yeah, probably.
He had like a repertoire of talents in a way, like a bit of a jack of like he could do a bit of tap and stuff, and he could like.
He was a dancer.
He was quite good at just working a crowd and stuff like. But I used to find him pretty funny, like in a silly way, but like
a song and dance man, like a kind of
But he'd appear on like quiz shows, panel shows, and like where shows where people would do charades and things like that, and he was quite funny and amusing at that.
A general entertainer.
Yeah.
From that kind of mold.
Variety man.
Happy. Yeah.
Brucey was a bit like that in a way, isn't he? He had many strings to the Brucey bow. He could do with like a bit of comedy, a bit of dancing.
Yeah. Music hall training.
Music hall, yeah. Exactly.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, Bobby.
Stop, don't do a thing. Don't do a thing.
Oh.
That's pretty bad.
Whoa.
Pretty awful. Yeah. Nasty. That could very nearly have killed him. I mean, he face planted onto concrete there with no way to stop himself.
In the wrestling parlance, he took the bump hard way. That's what they call it. When you don't.
And amazingly, he got out with basically, I think, just a bloody nose and some slightly
sued them, though.
hurt
Must
teeth.
have sued them rotten.
I mean, yeah, but actually, I don't know if he did because that wasn't broadcast for death. That was like a secret, hidden little mishap for ages. So I don't know.
Wow.
But yeah, well, he's very lucky not to have broken his neck or something. While his face is completely smashed. Dreadful.
Mm.
So
I mean, imagine if that was your death with Lionel Bowen and what's his name, Lionel Blair and Jim Bowen and Keith Chegwin all singing "Always Look on the Bright Side of Life" as you career to your death off a stocks, with your trousers down.
I tell you what I'll do, lads. Right, for my long-awaited appearance on Hat's channel, I'm going to curate the most obscure kind of figures of this ilk, of the Les Dennis sort of variety, of the Ken Godwins of this world.
We'll
I'm going to
call
make
it
a little compilation. And we're
Nima,
going to watch
Cringe
them all
hour.
Nima Parvini's variety show.
Exactly. I'm gonna.
We could have we could have musical interludes. We could play like a clip of Benny Hill singing, or
the academic agent world of light
from
entertainment.
We could even watch a bit of old minstrel show if you want, but yeah,
black and white minstrels. Yeah,
I'll just uncover. It'll take me a while. It might take me a couple of weeks, but I'll see if I can do it after the little one goes to bed tonight. Just find some stuff. And I think that's it. I think we did the super chats earlier. All that remains to say, Horus, anything you want to plug?
Not right now, thanks. I'll just tell people to watch Hat and Simon streams. They're good fun.
And Horace will be joining us for a special stream very soon.
That's right.
And we will let you know more about that shortly for a bit of a watch along.
Next week should be all goes to plan.
What are you going to watch? What are you going to do? Secret tease. What a tease!
Holding it back.
Tease.
We're learning about YouTube and copyright at the moment, the hard way.
Yeah, this is just a teaser. The trailer will be out later. So
let's see. Okay, all right. Well, I look forward to that, and I will make sure that the clips I find are so obscure that they're not going to run foul of copyright. Unless you're extremely unlucky.
Yeah, we got done last night just for unintentional nudity. There was a little clip of some German ladies in the early 20th century in their nuddy on the beach
with their assets in the window.
Yes.
All right. Well,
but YouTube relented and let us keep it. So
yeah,
turns out to be okay.
Remember this promo code OOFBrutal will work up until the end of tonight. So it's just like a kind of little trial run.
Can we see that one more time?
Yeah, if you want. Yeah.
Oof brutal.
Oof brutal.
Oof brutal.
Oof. 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 25% off all courses. Buy it now.
Brutal.
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 Oof brutal.
Buy it now.
Great gestures.
I'll have to see how I feel about that come October. I might change my mind by then. But there's a little sneak preview of the autumn sale that will be forthcoming. But there's a limited amount of them that will work just for today. All right, cheers everyone. Bye all.
What goes on in this town is none of your business.
As long as I'm living here, it is.
Then maybe you shouldn't be living here!
Well, that's easily fixed.